tribe name, right? The bloodline. Like what bloodline they from?
Repression.
It's the same thing. So I rep my blood.
I'ma rep my blood. Yeah. I'ma rep my blood. I'ma rep my blood. They wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I say this Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Stop acting like a dot though. We are not the same, that's why they show grudge. We are not the same, that's why they hold grudge. We are not the same, but still it's all love. Never put a stranger before my own blood. It's my prerogative to let you know now. You're not an adjective, you a pronoun, no doubt. Negro black color getting worn out. The brand doesn't fit anymore. You should throw it out, throw it out. Showing brotherly love, overcoming destruction. Wanna be thug, never ready instruction. Everyone under the sun looking for something. Every brother not a brother, don't make the assumption. It's an all-out war, the revolution is jumping. They single us out, cause they know we'll be thumping. Calling on Moors, telling me at the junction. Gotta sharpen our swords to teach these youngsters. My music is relevant, I move with intelligence. Dude act cool, but he do what they telling him. Never been a fool, cause I always study regular. Always use my tool, keep my circle 7 ready, yo. I'm spitting straight facts, yo. Yeah, feel the truth coming at you. Yo, tell me how the Moors turn black, though. Yeah, they chose fiction over natural, fiction not true.
All of that stuff, they still remember their tribe name, right? The bloodline. Like what bloodline they from?
Repression.
It's the same thing. So I rep my blood.
I'ma rep my blood. Yeah. I'ma rep my blood. I'ma rep my blood. They wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I say this Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Stop acting like a dot though. We are not the same, that's why they show grudge. We are not the same, that's why they hold grudge. We are not the same, but still it's all love. Never put a stranger before my own blood. It's my prerogative to let you know now. You're not an adjective, you a pronoun, no doubt. Negro black color getting worn out. The brand doesn't fit anymore. You should throw it out, throw it out. Showing brotherly love, overcoming destruction. Wanna be thug, never ready instruction. Everyone under the sun looking for something. Every brother not a brother, don't make the assumption. It's an all-out war, the revolution is jumping. They single us out, cause they know we'll be thumping. Calling on Moors, telling me at the junction. Gotta sharpen our swords to teach these youngsters. My music is relevant, I move with intelligence. Dude act cool, but he do what they telling him. Never been a fool, cause I always study regular. Always use my tool, keep my circle 7 ready, yo. I'm spitting straight facts, yo. Yeah, feel the truth coming at you. Yo, tell me how the Moors turn black, though. Yeah, they chose fiction over natural, fiction not true. They wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I say this Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Stop acting like a dot though. We are not the same, that's why they show grudge. We are not the same, that's why they hold grudge. We are not the same, but still it's all love. Never put a stranger before my own blood. The empire strike back and we coming for the top. Got them running like some rats, you could see them on the tracks. All rights reserved on every contract. They know we not really black, we ain't falling for that trap. Under color of law, yo, the cops be on our backs. The Moorish vanguard got the remedy for that. Circle 7 be the map, just to level the attack. I gotta pray to Allah to keep my family intact. No segregating. On God, we invincible but showing patience. We the mother and father of civilization. Watch the feathers raising. It's so amazing. The truth is so plain, but they still debating. Think about your last name and I'll be waiting. They put their trust on issues that they formulating. Let's have this conversation. Human rights, divine and sacred, no more time is wasting. They wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I say this Morocco. Wanna start a fight when I tell them it's Morocco. Stop acting like a dot though. We're not the same, that's why they show grudge. We're not the same, that's why they hold grudge. We're not the same, but still it's all love. Never put a stranger before my own blood. Never put a stranger before my own blood. Never put a stranger before my own blood. Blood, blood, blood. I'ma rep my blood. Red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. 5-point represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Big Son G.
This is what it feels like. 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 People running up to me that I don't know. Are you a prince? They ask, tell them I'm from Morocco. Look me up and down with a smile, not a frown. Turn their brain to water, watch the lower self drown. Wanna touch my antennas and steal my energy. Eyes bulge, telling them I'm always King Edward V. When it comes to facts, with most they get beggarly. They ask Morocco where? The farthest northwesterly. With every question asked, I respond cleverly. All dependents won't explain expertly. Going in their wallets, pull out pictures with feathers, breaking down the ring, then the Mason confesses. He's at 33 degrees, now the convo stretches like yoga into esoteric metaphysic lessons. When my people aren't like me, he impresses. When we take Moorish science to the highways and hedges. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like.
They tried to get you to think again. That's the prophet. I'm upright, don't need a friend. And you can't stop this. I'ma write with my pen. Violate me and I'ma sentence again. Remain cautious, cause often it's in again. That's in the police out, just the silence men. When they bust through your door, you won't breathe again. Nationality will show you how to live again. It can change the predicament you're living in. You can heal the whole world without medicine. Only truth can make you a better man. Why lie? Cause you got paid to murder men. Then you try to lock them up when they riot in. That's okay, cause for freedom I'm diving in. With no knowledge you come back to die again. Resurrect me not, cause I'd rather be one with Allah.
This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like.
Common sense was made before book sense. Canaanland Moors presents Common Sense Quick.
Legendary, bury me in the North Gates Cemetery, February the 4th days. Son of Mary, day ahead of my born day. Independence and law may civil literal lost case. With case laws, we break them down like Jericho. Keeping all my lions tamed, I'm Chris Jericho. I'll keep a mask on deck, I'm Rey Mysterio. Fake pandemics announced over the radio. Annoyed with the game, the joys and the pains. I'm Rob Bass, mixing with rock the hard way. I was in a lost state. Prophets stood me up right, brought me to a lost gate. Cooking like I'm Salt Bay, repping like I'm Denzel. Malcolm X, Deja Vu, Roman J. Israel. Had no but I lay in plain sight, but people still can't see it. So the snake's still showing up, stakes still high, so the race still going up. Warriors of the North Gate, we not slowing up. Born in the manger, sworn to be savior. Walk through the valley of the shadows of the death dip in slavery. Looking for life, the book of Genesis. Astroplane entrances, invoke the nemesis. Abstract Images of past lives kicking in. Danger, running for your life. Finish him.
Morris Omar, key man or oracle, using Trinity powers, decipher allegorical, lost in metaphorical, holy books are metaphysic, facts slap a dirty more or a Drew Ali critic, calling him Thomas or Walter and get your face caved, or cut like a close shave, drowned in my brain waves, squashed by heat waves, activating Kundalini, Abyssinia invaded by Mussolini, Selassie I in exile, reptile in Genesis, niggas appearing real, all I see is false evidence, DA are feminists, stomped on by elephants, more like no prejudice but want Moorish benefits, when you feel the cold magnetic resonance, apis horns of the sacred book all maleficent, great cosmic mothers, return to blessedness, no pestilence, ace all the testaments, tap into remembrance, never to forget again, use energy right, not put spell effects on men, wandering the earth plane with no they live shades, keeps you a mental slave as the horizon fades, it's been decades since Christian crusades, not enough rebellions, too many vigil bouquets, holding on to the fence, burning on doomsday, war ruled by Mars, it might be on a Tuesday.
Canaanland Moors presents Common Sense Quickie. What we do here is we add some common sense thinking to everyday situations or comments that may arise. Want to give it a try?
Greetings in Islam. So I'm curious to see how the Moors are going to react, to this European wearing a black fez of all. Speaking to the youth about kill, 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 do drugs, do drugs, do drugs, money, 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 bitches, bitches, bitches. I'm curious to see the Moors' reaction because, as far as me wearing a fez, I was saying Honors Noble Drew Ali and was being told not to wear a fez. So I want to see the same energy with this pale-skinned European. He says he's a Jew. He wears a black fez, speaking all the lower self rhetoric. We spoke about 1917, the Balfour Agreement or the Balfour Declaration, where Arthur Balfour made a declaration for all European Jews to immigrate, and therefore the Temple Mount was colonized. They pushed the Moors out into the Atlas Mountains and further out while they took the whole Temple Mount. Then they decided to tell the Moors they could have the Western Wall, the Western Gate. But then they took that, made the Western Wall area bigger for their worshiping for Jah, and then kept the Moors out of the Western Wall. But now you have someone who infiltrated the Temple Mount. Like the Jews, they used to be in the back, the backstage, running all the entertainment and putting out all the propaganda. But now they got one standing in front of you, speaking to the youth of the Asiatics who listen to, whether you want to call it, well, it's rap or hip hop, but it's not hip hop no more. Nonetheless, now you got a pale skinned man calling himself a Jew, standing before your youth, pumping kill, 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 do drugs, do drugs, do drugs, money, 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 bitches, bitches, bitches. So I'm waiting to see if y'all have the same energy for that you have for me wearing a fez saying honors the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. You see the fez and you see his pale locks. So it's just another move to take out your people. So I want to see if you got the same energies more. Islam. Robert Purvis is a historical character. His appearance and bearing are patrician in the broadest sense. He is a gentleman by birth, education, and practice. He was born at Charleston, South Carolina on August 4th, 1810. His father was an Englishman, his mother a free-born woman. His grandmother was of Moorish stock, being kidnapped in Morocco and was sold in Charleston to a maiden lady. Now we can pause right here. And as you see, his grandmother was kidnapped in Morocco, which is the Moorish Empire. Just like the prophet said, your own brother will put you back in slavery. So this mother could have went out somewhere. She was in the garden, 4 Moors run up on her with 3 Europeans. They snatch her up. And that's the same thing that happened to Omar ibn Said. And he ended up in South Carolina. And they ended up finding out he was a Moorish prince. So my message to the African Americans, the Afro Americans, if your family was brought here, it's 100% fact. Your ancestry and bloodline is Moorish. So respect that and honor your foremothers and forefathers. Again, African American, Afro American, this is ambiguous. And that we have facts here that you are Moorish, brothers and sisters. You're of Moorish royal bloodline. But as you see, the ones that was brought here was kidnapped because the Moorish Empire reached all the way from the Kingdom of Morocco across the Great Atlantis all the way to here. So let's think of Brother Robert Purvis. He had nothing to do with his grandmother being kidnapped and brought to South Carolina. However, he has Moorish blood in him that was amalgamated. So he's a European, but he has Moorish blood. I believe this is where a lot of the abolitionists came from, is they knew they had this Moorish blood in them. But let's see if he does the right thing, and let's see how he acts now that he knows that his grandmother's of Moorish blood. So his grandmother was Moorish, was kidnapped in that part of Moroccan Empire or the Moorish Empire and brought to Charleston. She was sold to a maiden lady who was so attached to her that when she died, she left her an emancipated woman. In 1817, his father, having retired from business, sent his family to Philadelphia with the intention of joining them there and England, where he intended permanently to make his home. But this latter purpose was frustrated by the sudden death of the father. In 1830, young Purvis became interested in anti-slavery work. There you go, Brother Purvis. Through the acquaintance of Benjamin Lundy and William Lloyd Garrison, the American Anti-Slavery Society was formed in 1833 in Philadelphia. See, I'm telling you, the abolitionists. Like, I've been compared to John Brown so many times by Moors, but I bet you he had the Moorish blood in him too. He was a member of the convention and for many years vice president of the society. He was also president for many years of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society and a member of the executive committee. The Underground Railroad was organized in 1838 and he was made president of it. So the European was one of the presidents, bro, because he had Moorish blood in him and he knew the BS that was going on. Since the war, Mr. Purvis has been active in all efforts for the betterment of the condition of the race. For the conditions of who? For the Moorish. He has been very liberal and independent in his politics and has led several successful revolts from Republican ring rule in Philadelphia. He is a stanch admirer of President Cleveland and enjoys the esteem and confidence of the best men of all parties in his state. He is a man of wealth and spends his leisure in quiet and seclusion, being of late years quite broken in health. He has labored long and earnestly for the advancement of his race. I guess he's claiming to be Moorish, and has earned the rest and quiet which he is now able and free to indulge. So we speak of the Underground Railroad. Those going north would follow the Big Dipper. And as you know, the Big Dipper, it'll send you in the direction of north always. So that's one key also that I seen in resemblance of like Noble Drew Ali's Circle 7. It looks just like the Big Dipper. It has the 7 stars, is facing north. So honors to Brother Robert Purvis. And also, brothers and sisters, as far as being ambiguous as African American or Afro American, like, this ain't an attack. I want everyone to know who they are. And this is letting you know that you're of Moorish bloodline. There is a window called the value of individuality. Some people have nothing definite or distinctive about them, no characteristics to distinguish them from the downright determined, resolute individual. And to save our modern civilization, we must have individuality. Nowadays, we do not follow the call of every agitator, although some have that traditional weakness of the medieval period. The men of today are capable of individual thought and action, And the men who will safeguard our nation will stand upon their own intelligence. Let there be something about us that has strength and individuality. To build a human character is sublime, and let our thinking govern our acts. Be someone, and then with brotherhood, be something. The next window, the hour of nationality. The one who does not feel a pride for his nation, to whatever land he may belong, is not a man in the age in which he lives. National pride, national service, and national sacrifice has become the colossal spirit of our history. The hour has come for all to plan intelligently, resolutely, for the reconstruction of the age for nationality. Let us get together, both as a community and as a nation. Let the spirit of nationality grow. It is grand to be a brotherhood. It is grand to be an individual, but it is better to be a nationality. Make the country great because you as an individual contributed to its greatness. By the contribution of loyalty, life, and love, make the nation grow great. Comes the final window, the age of universality. Individuality cannot be without nationality and vice versa. But without the sacrifice of our nationality, we can become a part of internationality. We must see that with the nations of the world, we live up to the intelligent forces of universality. Love and truth, brothers and sisters. Love and truth. We must leave behind the Stone Age and enter the age of individual brotherhood. Let the Americans step into the arena of modern civilization and give the best there is in them. Do their noblest and best in the office, home, and everywhere. Life's forth having and living if we do it right, and with the thought that we helped God to make humanity nobler, brighter, and better. Let us strive onward to the ultimate goal, brothers and sisters. And I leave you with a quote from Noble Drew Ali. All nations of the earth in these modern days are seeking peace, but there is but one true and divine way that peace may be obtained in these days, and it is through love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice being taught universally to all nations in all lands. Noble Drew Ali is the universal prophet for the nations, brothers and sisters. Peace and love. I've been telling you all as far as the Kellogg Peace Pact that happened in Havana, Cuba. This meeting was determined upon by the Havana Pan American Conference, which condemned war as an instrument of national policy and declared for the Pacific settlement of conflicts between states. And I told you that, 21 nations agreed to perpetual peace, and Noble Drew Ali was there and present. And he showed the Moorish flag and the U.S. flag, or the U.S. banner, and he took the image of it, showing he publicly gave his declaration to perpetual peace. And no nation was supposed to harm the other unless they was backed into a corner. Pan American Conference, which condemned war as an instrument of national policy and declared for the Pacific settlement of conflicts between states. It is expected that a multilateral convention providing for both arbitration and conciliation will be concluded between the 21 nations, including the United States, which will participate. But are they still participating? We have in the earlier videos the telegrams from the different nations, and one of the nations said, how are the Sharifian government going to agree to this, because we're the ones all at war, but they're not at war. And they made the agreement that anyone that wishes to be a party to this Kellogg Pact, this international peace treaty, the first one for all nations, Noble Drew Ali said the uniting of Asia, and that's what the great meeting is on. That's what this was. It was a compact agreement of perpetual peace from all the different nations, and Noble Drew Ali was part of that. He has the image again of him there showing publicly perpetual peace. So why did that so-called nation start violating? And this takes it way out of any domestic kind of claim. This is international. This was an international treaty, the first one at Pan American Conference in Havana, Cuba. It was called the Kellogg Compact. Russia, Germany, Japan, all of them. Turkey, Egypt, Britain, all of them. India, United States, Noble Drew Ali was there. The Moorish government or the Moorish nation was there. Now, within this peace pact, it said you had to give an oral or written statement to the Secretary of State of Washington, D.C. But guess who was at the Havana, Cuba? Secretary Kellogg. So Noble Drew Ali already gave his, declaration to perpetual peace. When Secretary Kellogg began last December to bring up to date the peacemaking machinery of the American government, a number of arbitration treaties negotiated by Secretary Root were about to expire, and conciliation treaties existed with only 10 nations aside from the countries of Latin America. Since December 31st, nations have been offered the revised arbitration treaty by Mr. Kellogg. Now, what is this revised arbitration? Whatever the revised is, we don't want that. We want what happened at Havana, Cuba. And that's what Noble Drew Ali did. He handled his business in Havana, Cuba. Whatever they was trying to do after this revised statutes or whatever, some arbitration and conciliation treaties are also in effect between the United States and Latin America nations. But Secretary Kellogg has refrained from completing these in view of the fact that the Latin American nations are to meet in Washington in December. See, they're always trying to do something after the fact. That's why I said Noble Drew Ali was in Havana, Cuba when the real stuff went down, and he handled his business then. So everybody knew about the perpetual peace between all nations. You're not supposed to run up on another nation and treat them any which way, especially running up on them with firearms like the policia does in these days and times. That's an act of war. That's why Noble Drew Ali said, don't harm no one unless you're backed into a corner, and then you can drop the world on them. So they already broke this treaty, but it's an international treaty that we have proof that Noble Drew Ali was there, trying to have perpetual peace, which all nations agreed upon. This is where we get into the mandate. Settle disputes over boundaries. Nations still making agreements on who owns what. This is where we get into the mandate. Marcus Garvey was Noble Drew Ali's forerunner. You know why? Because Noble Drew Ali was able to sit back and watch the movements of Marcus Garvey. Like Marcus Garvey, 10 years before Noble Drew Ali went to Havana, Cuba conference, Marcus Garvey was at a conference, and he was pushing for a mandate for Africa. And this was 10 years. So Noble Drew Ali was sitting back watching the movements. And, if he made an error in something, just like when Marcus Garvey went to prison for the mail fraud, what Noble Drew Ali do? He jumped on it and was telling them all, hey, you get any mail that's in my name, send it to me. He already was seeing the errors that was made, and he was improving on it. So that was his forerunner. So by the time Noble Drew Ali got to the Pan American Conference in Havana, Cuba, he knew what to do to get the mandate for America. Because 10 years earlier, Marcus Garvey was pushing for an African mandate for so-called Africa. And we have that in the Maxim Almanac clippings, but you can go find it. But it's there. So yeah, settle disputes over boundaries. So we know Noble Drew Ali had a mandate for America. And in this clipping here, it's breaking down all the different places of what nations got what, but it don't break down North America. But we'll go through where it speaks of Morocco. To a conference among representatives of Great Britain, France, Spain, and Italy on international questions relating to Morocco and the international city of Tangier. You know why they was brought up the first? Because they was the ones colonizing and raping Morocco, pushing all the Moors out into the mountains, man, while they was taking over Holy Land, over oil too. I have a whole nother demonstration in regards to Jerusalem oil. To Morocco, the international city of Tangier, the United States government sent a note which said that it presumed the open door policy would be maintained. What do you mean open door? You mean just fly in and out of the empire and take advantage? France continued its pacification of Morocco, securing submission in 1928 of the country of the Ida Utana tribe southwest of Marrakesh. Farther east, Italy and France are reported to have reached an agreement by which certain territorial changes in southwest boundaries of Tripolitania will be made in exchange for the surrender of Italy's claim for special privileges for Italians in Tunisia territory. So they're still fighting. Europeans are still fighting over the colonization. They're still doing it. Even after they sit here in front of the nations and said they was going to have perpetual peace. It's crazy, man. These Europeans are nasty. Look how they switch it for the people that are just reading the newspaper. Washington, shifts in international real estate, which leaves some nations with more and some with less territory, occurred in 1928. You see what I mean? Major territorial population and language changes of the year are reported in a bulletin from the Washington, D.C. headquarters of the National Geographic Society. In South America, a boundary sore spot was eliminated. Continues the bulletin. With the secession Putumayo region by Colombia to Peru, the area of Peru has been increased 13,000 square miles by the award of this tropic. That's why I'm saying, brothers and sisters, I have a lot of stuff, man, that if I had more Moors going in on this, because it's just one Muslim son going in on all this craziness. And you have to understand how all this works, because Noble Ali said he gonna keep the European here long enough so you know how it runs. Because the skeleton of this U.S. government, the operation, the skeleton of it, it's how it's supposed to be. But right now, man, it's full of water and it's rusted and the gears are worn down, man, and it's leaking. We need you Moors to gut it out and get this stuff right, man. You have a prophet that went, everybody talking about recognized internationally and all that. Well, we got a prophet that went to the first international peace conference in Havana, Cuba, with all nations, and he was present, and he made his public proclamation and declaration of perpetual peace with all nations. And Moors are definitely the first to get ran up on with firearms before any of these other European nations can claim it. But like I said, you're being colonized and they continue to do it afterwards. But we have all these Moors that wanted to go through the prophet's drawers and take his treasury and take mandates or whatever they felt like they needed. But it's not going to stop them from the wrath of Allah. Another very important key is the plenipotentiary that spoke to Cuba for the United States. And his residence was in Chicago at the same time of Noble Drew Ali. And guess what he was? Noble Judah. He was a European man, but he was also, his title was the plenipotentiary for Cuba, the speaker for United States. So he spoke between the United States and Cuba. And guess what? He was present at Havana, Cuba at this Pan American conference as well. And we have the proof of that. And his wife owned AT&T. Her family owned AT&T. And how this international peace started was presidents started telegramming other presidents. But if Noble Drew Ali was the one doing this and entering the Sharifian government, he was a genius because he got them all riled up. You know what I'm saying? Because one president thought he was getting a message from another president, and then it started a big old, the great meeting and all this stuff. All I'm saying is the nations that made this perpetual peace agreement, if they're not doing it in these days and times, then they are traitors. They are traitors to national principles and traitors to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. They made a vow. They signed a pact to outlaw war. And we have all the proof, for even the pens and all, brothers and sisters. And most of all, most important, we have the prophet Noble Drew Ali that's sitting there with perpetual peace. And the Moors haven't broke it because they've been the ones attacked. But all these different nations, they made a renunciation of war and they broke it. And this is international. Praise be to Allah and his prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Divine honors to the Moorish divine and national movement of the world. It has been proved in various portions of the world that the Mohammedan religion cannot adopt Occidental civilization and survive. To Europeanize a Muslim means to rob him of all faith. That's the same as what Mother was speaking about, is why would I walk out the door and leave everything I know in the house? To Europeanize a Muslim means to rob him of all faith. That is a serious thing to do, for while one agnostic may be an exemplary man, a people without a sheet anchor of faith is certain to sink. However, you know that the Moors, they go by knowing. So few Muslims have been converted to Christianity that the record is not worth repeating. In Turkey, Syria, in Egypt, in India, in Central Africa, wherever the missionaries of the cross have gone, they have made many converts, but not from Islam. So, brothers and sisters, stay steadfast on your square. Nothing can shake you from this truth. The Mohammedan is a monotheist, and he believes in one God. The Trinitarian theory of Orthodox Christianity offends his monotheistic sense. If Christian civilization shakes his faith in Islam, it leaves him without any belief whatever. What the second and third generations will be or will do remains for time to show. And that's true indeed all the way until these days and times, brothers and sisters. They try to take away your religion. They try to take away your sense of civics and knowing thyself, protecting your rights. And most importantly, being on one note with your brother and sister, unity with, national principles, being on one accord with your brother and sister in one path, moving in one motion. Nothing can stop that. A turn in the road suddenly disclosed to us the end of our pilgrimage. It lay at our feet, an immense mass of white buildings surrounded by high gray and ruined battlements. The golden rays of the setting sun seemed to bring out in strong relief the minarets of the mosques and to bathe in a flood of light that great monument of Moroccan life. There before us, silent, isolated, and ancient, lay the highest example of Moorish civilization. And yet no paved roads led up to it. No cars or wagons disturbed the death-like silence which covered the city. No shrieks of engines, no hum of harvesters, no smoke of factories, no signs of life, pulsating, moving, producing Western life were in evidence. We gazed long and fondly upon the picture before us and reluctantly followed our guide along the road to the gates of the city. Now they were speaking of Moorish minaret. Adjoining the cathedral is the Giralda, originally a Moorish minaret or prayer tower erected in 1184 to 96, towering 308 feet, from which a grand view is obtained. Not far from here is the magnificent Al-Ghazar, formerly the palace of Moorish kings. And then I was doing the studies and it led me to quote unquote the secret Kaaba of the Moors, And then I went and I found the minarets and I found the columns that was at the cathedral. That was the Moorish prayer mosque. A more detailed demonstration is on Instagram though, about the minarets and stuff. I have another image that was in the newspaper as well. Then I have this clipping, amazing spread of Islamism. So I'm gonna be doing this demonstration and doing a read through, or I may, get up with a couple Moors and we might do some builds. I know I'm supposed to be doing some builds with a Grand Sheet soon. They're getting their platform set up, but I also want to bring Moors onto here so they can give their opinions on the studies too, because I'm sure they found keys and I'd like for the Moors to share on the channel. Also, more keys came up in regards to Havana and Prophet Noble Drew Ali. All the Europeans was in alignment, brothers. Look at that. The Prophet was turning your focus towards Nicaragua because at the time they was having a revolution and they was known for wearing that headdress. So Noble Drew Ali had on that headdress too. But guess what? The Nicaraguan flag has a fez in the middle of it, and it's known as the Liberty Cap of Freedom. Who you think brought them that? 1908. We'll knock this clip out, and then I'll get out of here, brothers and sisters. Hughes throws weight of U.S. to outlaw war. Remember, they're all nations of the world is seeking peace, is what Noble Drew Ali said. They're supposed to be seeking peace. Havana. Charles Evan Hughes, chairman of the American delegation at the 6th Pan American Conference, amid the applause of the representatives of all today, threw the whole weight of the United States behind the proposal to the republics of the Western world outlaw all aggressive warfare in this hemisphere. So what's going on? Why is white and black people getting killed in the streets? Because they ain't in the peace compact. At the same time, Mr. Hughes outlined to the conference a plan for the maintenance of American peace. He was again enthusiastically applauded when he declared his country to be opposed to any acts of aggression, desirous of seeing force abolished from the hemisphere. And seeking nothing but prosperity, independence, and friendship of all the American states, which Noble Drew Ali is the Moorish America. The Committee of Pan-American Union Affairs first met and approved the final text of the convention related to that body, as well as resolution to provide a modest vivendi for its organization until the convention is ratified by the governments. Then the Committee on Public International Law met and selected for discussion the report on Pacific settlement and international disputes, originally prepared by Ricardo Alfaro of Panama, collaborated by the subcommittee. Early in the discussion, Fernando Gonzalez of Mexico introduced a resolution in which all aggressive war was declared illegal and providing the international dispute should be settled by pacific means. You all better recognize who the prophet is. He's the originator of international affairs, brothers and sisters, sitting in perpetual peace. We got more to come. Islam.
Homeless and Adidas, owned by the Jews. Jam Master Jay was dead the moment Run wore the shoes. Nipsey Hussle walking with the blood of Selassie. Had to take him out, he was stepping too flashy. I tell you if you ask me, at depth, ask Nasty. Spitting out the truth till Cohen tell smash me. Illest on the flow, troglodyte in Nebraska. Morocco is the empire, Maria smelling gassy. Justice coming knocking, ain't no talking for you traitors. Thunderdomes rocking, fences flying, respirators. Scimitars serrated, slicing flesh like a laser. A razor to eastern stars, printing stargazers. Masons in the mazes, but I'm bloodline related. Noses flowing through the heart like my arteries inflated. Infiltrators torn apart, handed to the waiter. Put the bones in the bag, Cujo will want them later.
There once was a poor mason or bricklayer in Granada who kept all the saints' days and holy days and Saint Monday in the bargain. And yet he grew poor and could scarcely earn bread for his numerous family. One night he was roused from his first sleep by a knock at the door. He opened it and beheld before him a tall, meager, endeavorous-looking priest. "Hello, honest friend," said the stranger. "I have often observed that you are a good Christian and one to be trusted. Will you undertake a job this very night?" "With all my heart, Senor Padre, on a condition that I am paid accordingly, as a servant is worthy of a man's hire." "That you shall be, but you must suffer yourself to be blindfolded." To this the mason made no objection. So being hoodwinked, he was led by the priest through a various rough lanes and winding passages until he stopped before the portals of a house. The priest then applied a key, turning a creaking lock and opening what seemed to be a ponderous door. They quickly entered. The door was closed and bolted, and the mason was conducted through an echoing corridor and spacious hall into the interior part of the building. Here the bandages was removed from his eyes, and the rest of that I cannot make out, brothers and sisters, but we'll continue. In the center was the dry basin of an old Moorish fountain, under which the priest requested him to form a small vault. Bricks and mortar being at hand for that purpose, he accordingly worked all night, but without finishing the vault. Just before daybreak, the priest put a piece of gold in his hand, and having again blindfolded him, conducted him back to his dwelling. "Are you willing to return and complete your work?" "Gladly, Senor Padre, provided I am well paid." "Well then, tomorrow at midnight I will call again." "Now," said the priest, "you must help me to bring forth the bodies that are to be buried in this vault." At these words, he followed the priest with trembling steps into a retired chamber of the mansion, expecting to behold some ghastly spectacle of death, but was relieved on seeing 3 or 4 portly jars standing in one corner. They were evidently full of money, and it was great difficulty that he and the priest carried them to the tomb. The vault was then closed, the pavement replaced, and all traces of the work obliterated. The mason was again hoodwinked and led forth by a route different from that which he had come. After they had wandered for a long time through a perplexed maze of lanes and alleys, they halted. The priest then put 2 pieces of gold into his hand. "Wait here," said he, "until you hear the cathedral bell. If you presume to uncover your eyes before that time, evil will befall you." So saying, he departed. The mason waited faithfully, amusing himself by weighing the gold pieces in his hand and clinking them against each other. The moment the bell rang its matin peal, he uncovered his eyes and found himself on the banks of the Penal, from whence he made the best of his way home, and reveled with his family for a whole fortnight on the profits of his night's work, after which he was as poor as ever. He continued to work a good deal to keep saints' days and holy days from year to year, while his family grew up as gaunt as a crew of gypsies. As he was seated one morning at the door of his house, he was accosted by a rich old man who was noted for owning many houses and being a griping landlord. The man of money eyed for a moment from beneath a pair of shaggy eyebrows. "I am told, friend, that thou art poor." "There is no denying the fact, senor. It speaks for itself." "I presume then you will be glad of a job and work cheap?" "As cheap, my master, as any man in Granada." "That's what I want. I have an old house going to decay that costs me more than it is worth to keep it in repair, for nobody will live in it, so I must contrive to patch it up and keep it together at as small as expense as possible." The mason was accordingly conducted to a huge deserted house that seems going to ruin. Passing through several halls and chambers, he entered to an inner court, where his eyes was caught by an old Moorish fountain. This is like in Circle 7, the brother that was tilling the land, and he had all the gold underneath, but the other brother had the higher gnosis, you know? "It seems to me," said he, "as if I had been in this place before, but it is like a dream. Who occupied the house formerly?" "A pest upon him," cried the landlord. "It was an old miserly priest who cared for nothing but himself. It was supposed he would leave all his treasures to the church. He died suddenly, and the friars thronged it to take possession of his money, but nothing could they find but a few ducats in a leather purse. The worst luck has fallen upon me, for since his death, the fellow continues to occupy my house without paying rent. I find there is no taking the law of a dead man." The people pretend to hear the clinking of gold all night in the chamber where the old man slept, as if he was counting his money, and sometimes groaning and moaning about the court. Whether true or false, these stories have brought a bad name about my house, and not a tenant will remain within it. "Enough," cried the mason sturdily. "Let me live in your house rent-free until some better presents, and I will engage to put it in repair and quit the troubled spirits that disturb it. I am a good Christian and a poor man, and not to be daunted." The offer of the poor man was very readily assented to. He moved with his family into the house and continued his engagements. By little and little, he restored it to its former state. There was no longer heard the clinking of gold at night in the chamber, but it began to be heard by day in the pocket of the living mason. In a word, he increased rapidly in wealth, to the admiration of all his neighbors, and became one of the richest men in Granada. He gave large sums to the church, by way, no doubt, of satisfying his conscience, and on his deathbed to his son and heir. So what is my conclusion to this story? Why are you reading this? Why are you reading this story, Latif? It's definitely exoteric. You know, we have a mason. We have him being blindfolded and taken on a path. He knew about treasures that only him and the priest knew about, of a treasure. And then he later came back and received the treasure, and then it was given to his heirs. And it was also a treasure that was abandoned. You know what I'm saying? And again, like I said, one of the main reasons is I seen that it was in harmony with the teal story in the Prophet's Quran. So it's definitely exoteric, and it's a tale from Granada. I hope you all enjoy, brothers and sisters. Like I said, you may not like all the videos I overturn, every stone that I can find. And when I find one that I see is special, I try to share it with you, brothers and sisters. Islam, divine honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish divine and national movement of the world. I yield the floor. So I received a question. How do we take control of our assets on the estate? You have to keep in mind at this moment, you're being colonized, so you have tanks to go against and everything. So right now you're being colonized, but Noble Drew Ali said, be industrious, make something out of nothing. Like I was speaking about the brother in Venezuela, they threw all of the paper money in the streets. So he took it, sat down at a picnic table and started making these very nice necklaces by folding them and all this craziness, right? Being industrious, making something out of nothing. But also, most important, always practice and exercise and support free national standards so that when that wheel stops, you won't miss a step because you've been practicing and you've been exercising and being active in free national standards. Being connected with your brother and sister, you have this internet, take advantage of it. But this is for the yet unborn, so we may not see it, but you want to make sure that there's a possibility that your bloodline will see it. Something bad's got to happen for the Europeans and for this colonization to fall on its face. And something divine is going to have to happen, whether, Noble Drew Ali said, destruction is sure to come, earthquakes and all, if you do not follow under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. As I said, it's going to have to be some kind of divine happening. And Noble Drew Ali said it's going to be the earthquake that'll split United States in two. The prophet gave you an answer to everything, your resources. He said gold's going to be revealed. So you got gold. He said about the fruits and everything's going to be more plump. So you're going to have produce. Like he let you know about your resources. So you better get into it now. Even if you're doing a 9 to 5, just get in there and see how the operation is moving, what works and what don't. You see it real easy. I have the live video about phosphate. That's one of the most important things that the Moors have. They own like 85% of it, and it has to be used for produce, for growing things. You have to have phosphate in the soil in America. It needs phosphate. That's why Morocco is in power to this day with US, because they own 85% of the phosphate. Remember the George Washington letter when he said he didn't have no crops and stuff like that? That's because they didn't have phosphate around the soil they had. So you know what happened? The Sultan had to bring over a bunch of iguana shit, and then they put it on the soil, and then they was able to grow. But now, you know what? I was talking to this farmer, and I was talking to him about the phosphate like that. And he was like, yeah. He was like, we don't use bat guano no more. He's like, that was a long time ago. He was like, you know what we use now, boy? I was like, what's that? He was like, we use human excrement now. He said it says it on the fertilizer bag. So when you smell something out in the country and you're like, man, them cows stink. That ain't cows, man. They're spraying stuff on the crops and it's human shit and you're smelling it, but you think it's a cow field. Like right now, I live next to a cow field and you never smell any of that, brother. That is them spraying it on the crops. So just stay prepared, because tomorrow you could wake up and the fezzes will be in the street, brother. Turbans and fezzes, Or it can never happen until your babies come. But always just stay with the prophet and study. I was listening to this elder, right? He was speaking about, tricks to memorizing things. But he said the ancient method was, if you want to memorize, he said, they would read it 10 times. They would wash their face with cold water, read it 10 times and go right to bed. And then they wake up, wash their face again with cold water, and then read it 10 more times. And by the time they did that, the subconscious read it 2,000 times. And you would continue to practice this until you could tap into the infinite potential of your mind, is what the elder said, to the exact words. Islam, study, study, study. That's what Noble Drew Ali said, so that you can be versed in every subject. That means when you're communicating with anybody, you'll be able to connect with them through anything. Oh, they've been working on a car, you know about cars, so you can speak with them and, have a bond with them. Oh, they speak about this. Well, you know about this. Stay studied. You know what I'm saying? But in regards to the memorization, like that's good, but it's also bad because, someone comes to you and they have your sacred book memorized, but you don't, it kind of makes you look bad. You know what I mean? So people use that to fool people and make them think they should listen to them, just like I said in the book of Eli, he wanted that Bible because he knows he could use that to persuade the people. In regards to persuading people, like everybody's always looking for the new improved thing, even in religion, they're always saying reformed. Like when we speaking of Mufti Muhammad Sadiq and Cujo was speaking about there may be an image of Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, Marcus Garvey, and the Prophet. And that very well could be because his mosque or his Ahmadiyya temple was on Wabash in Chicago at the same time of Noble Drew Ali. So I know they crossed paths, if Noble Drew Ali spoke to him, I'm sure he really, put down the facts and he was saying he was going to do better. But, we see the actions of what these people did after the Prophet passed. Julius Rosenwald, he was sitting next to the Prophet. And right after Prophet passed, he made 100,000 schools with African American history in it. So he totally put them back to sleep. It also came to my attention. There's other things I want to, demonstrate and put on the record. In regards to lectures, that happened 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago, the lectures that you would go to with the Moorish elders, Hakeem and all of them. It used to be, and I think it's crazy that I can say that now, but it used to be one video on YouTube and it was Hakeem, right? And say he found this one key, but it's a 3-hour video and you're not going to get that key unless you're like 2 hours and 15 minutes in. And it's the only video on YouTube that has this key. You had to watch 2 hours and 15 minutes in to get that key. In these days and times, people done seen that video and they done took clips of the videos and got it in and has it in shorts and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier to get keys these days. So you need to take advantage of these devices. We used to have to, hours of study. Now you just wake up, turn your device on. Someone done got on that key. Someone just done playing that little snippet, or they done built on and unfolded more. I found this clip about the oldest tree in the world. They wasn't allowed to touch the trunk or whatever. And that ties into what I'm saying because you're able to study. Now you could be 2 months in and get a key that we used to have to watch hours and hours of elders. You know what I'm saying? And you can get it just getting the short now. That's what I'm getting to. But as far as the trunk, you're able to make your trunk stouter quicker so that when the wind comes, you're not blown over on your face, So take advantage of it, Moors, because you don't have any excuse now. It was so much harder just 10 to 15 years ago. I can say 12 years ago for me. And I'm just now coming into my own is what I'm saying. So take advantage of just being able to fall on a short that has a real important key and pay attention to it. You're able to go through, put the circle 7 in a computer now, go to the search. You know how they was trying to find different codes within the Torah and stuff? Man, if you did that with Noble Drew Ali circle 7, there's no telling what will pop up. But nonetheless, you can go on there and go in the search and just look up certain words and see how many times that word's in. You know what I'm saying? We're able to take advantage. And right here's a perfect time for me to take the opportunity to speak on the Maghreb Al-Aqsa. There's also a Maghreb Al-Aqsa temple. And I've heard the elders speak about that was one of the places, what is known as the Akashic Records, but it was one of the few places that actually first had internet. What was their Google hooked to? You know what I'm saying? And then it webbed out from the mosques to the lighthouses over the oceans. Same thing as what Peter Moon speaks about as far as when they was messing with lighthouses and they ended up melting someone into a boat. You know, how the boat disappeared and people, it's just crazy, man. Messing with ancient knowledge that they know nothing of. But we know that this ancient knowledge, as far as the communications and using frequencies and for the internet or making information shoot from lighthouses across the ocean to the roofs of mosques into people's minds, which brings me to the metals and the different things that are made in these devices. As far as compressed sand, you know, Noble Drew Ali said, throw some sand up and you know what'll happen. They use compressed sand and that make silicone. They use silver and all kinds of platinums, and that's what's all in them temples, man. Just like the Catholic Church that I was around, Knights of Columbus, the St. James Church, the whole top is copper. The whole top is copper, brothers and sisters. Just like all the clippings that I have, all major cathedrals were first Moorish mosques, and we got the clippings that specifically say Moorish mosques. And this St. James is a very old temple. And like I said, man, you can tell and you can feel the sacredness when you're on that land. But most historical churches that are metal with a weird top in the Americas, it was a Muslim mosque to begin with. They was receiving information, whether it was, you know, the moon is the first natural satellite. So they may have been using the satellites, these mosque roofs, and also the moon. Who knows what Google they was connecting with. As far as the kosher rapper, you know, he had the 5 and the 2 and just doing all the craziness, man. They're getting real bold. They want to see how dumb they can make you look. Speaking of old videos, there was a Rabbi Finkelstein, I think. Yes, Finkelstein. What he said was, we'll tell you that we put human in your meat and you'll still eat it. We're just going to see how dumb you're going to be. And that's what they're doing with this kosher. So when I see colonization projects being put in place like this, you know, sometimes I'm going to run out and throw the rock at the giant's toe, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes there's going to be 8 or 9 more throwing rocks too. Then the whole crowd behind us runs into the valley or the dale. And I don't know if it's because they're in fear or if it's because they're traitors. Like I was saying on Instagram, y'all can watch the prophet get chased around the temple, but I'm jumping in. I'm not going to allow that to happen, man. I owe the prophet. And I don't owe nobody, man, but I owe the prophet. What he brought puts me at peace, you know. As I said, I'm an orphan, and I had a lot of chaos and violence going on in my development up until 7, you know. As far as studying and taking in simple things up until 7, that's important. But just like in the article of Noble Drew Ali's, it speaks of a monster being sick in the mind. And Noble Drew Ali's supposed to cure you of that. And you supposed to stand up in your stench and everything, just like Lazarus. That's like I said, I'm the modern day Lazarus. Noble Drew Ali did the unbelievable. He raised a pale man from the dead in front of the Moors. And y'all need to take heed. When the Spanish flag came down from Havana's Morro Castle on New Year's Day, 1899, one chapter of history was closed. The Spanish Empire in America became an episode that was past. In the space of 406 years, 2 months, and 10 days from the morning when Columbus landed on San Salvador until Castellanos turned over his authority to General Brooke in the Palace of Havana. So now we're getting to kind of understand why Noble Drew Ali was in Havana. The rule of Spain had been a huge fact in the life of America. After the Treaty of Paris in 1782, by which England surrendered East Florida to the Spaniards, to whom France had ceded Louisiana 20 years before, the Spanish dominions entirely surrounded the Gulf of Mexico and stretched in one unbroken mass from Cape Horn to the Hudson's Bay. That ain't Hudson Bay. Those is Moorish stocks, everything L country. It was then that the Spanish episode in the New World reached its climax. 18 years later, the retrocession of Louisiana marked the beginning of the decline of Spain's American empire. After that, one province after another fell away until now not a Spanish flag is to be found flying anywhere in the vast region through which 100 years ago the traveler might have journeyed for 8,000 miles without finding anything else. This passing vision of empire recalls two other parallel episodes, both more extended in time than the sway of Spain in America, but each like it evanescent. One was in Spain itself, where the Moors maintained Muslim dominion for 781 years. Throughout the Middle Ages, Spain was regarded as essentially a part of Africa. Malaga had been a Muslim city for 600 years when Smyrna, Trebizond, and Constantinople were still Christian strongholds. But as the centuries rolled on, the crescent slowly retreated until the last inch of the Moorish Empire in Spain disappeared. Listen to this. In the very year that saw the beginning of the Spanish Empire in America, because America was part of the Moorish Empire. Moorish Empire in Spain disappeared in the very year they saw the beginning of the Spanish Empire in America. So when the Moorish Empire fell, the Spanish Empire started in America because America is part of the Moorish Empire. I want to make a correction when I say Spanish Empire. Really, it's the Spanish Inquisition or the Spanish colonization, which may very be why Noble Drew Ali went to Havana, Cuba, because in the beginning of this reading, we were speaking about Havana, where it was the Moro castle that was taken over. So Noble Drew Ali had all this history. That newspaper clipping was 1889. Now we're going to push forward to 1954. Justice Douglas finds racism rife in French Morocco. The French use racial discrimination in its most degrading forms in Morocco to keep the Moors in subjection. Sound familiar? Justice William Douglas says in the Current Look magazine, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, writing about his recent trip to the French Protectorate in North Africa, says that the Moors are denied education, are paid starvation wages, and are terrorized by police state methods. That's the same thing that's going on in these days and times. Moorish farmhands and labor. Keep in mind, when the Moor called the Moroccan Kingdom Embassy, she said the French Protectorate is no longer here because it's now in America. When a territory is colonized, a protectorate must come in because you have most of the population that will be colonized and Europeanized very easy because they bring in things that they've never seen before and they love it. But then you have the few that know they're being colonized and they're willing to fight against the colonizers. That's why you have a protectorate, to protect the 90% against the 10%. Just like in America, you have Asiatics burning their hair straight, thinking that paper with slave masters is of value. They're riding around. Their main goal is to get them a Nazi sled, to get them as much jewelry as they can. And it's just BS, bro. But the chosen few, when they're finally ran out, then the protectorate will leave. But the protectorate will stay there until the businesses and everything is set up the way they want it and it's colonized. Mwah, perfect. Moorish farmhands and laborers get around 50 cents a day for their labor. He says they live in squalid mud houses with hardly enough food to keep them alive. Listen to this. The incidence of tuberculosis is so high among the Moors that the French did not dare publish the figures from a recent survey. Immediately, you think of Noble Drew Ali. What did he do? He had to find the cure to tuberculosis because he knew the Moors had problems with it. Now, I found Claude Green as a member of the Tuskegee Institute, and as soon as Noble Drew Ali passed, Claude Green had a whole infirmary of people that had tuberculosis, and he was trying to treat them. But see, what they wanted to do was make the synthetic tuberculosis cure. So basically, one of the reasons Noble Drew Ali was killed, because they stole his herbs and remedies. Now, as far as tuberculosis, they made it into what would they call a penicillin. But listen to this. Tuberculosis, if not treated correctly, can form into syphilis and HIV/AIDS. So as far as Al Capone in Chicago at the same time of Noble Drew Ali, what did he end up dying of? Syphilis. It got into his brain and messed him up real bad. Now my studies trying to find like the ingredients of Noble Drew Ali's remedies. Like I looked up India's natural cures for tuberculosis, and I find a lot of it back in the day was cannabis and opium. So Noble Drew Ali may have had cannabis and opium in the remedy itself. But see, Claude Green and all them was thinking of business-wise. They wanted to turn it in and make it synthetic because you can really make a big industry of it. And that's exactly what they was doing. But like the drug stores that have the globe in the window, I have the clipping where it shows that the Moorish origin of the globe and the drug stores and all that came from the Moors because they was the original and first cures of the world. Parisians noted for the warm welcome they give Asiatic visitors and entertainers would be shocked to know that public toilets in Morocco are often segregated. Justice Douglas declares in the Look article, child labor appears in Morocco in a vicious form. Justice Douglas said he saw Moorish children from 6 to 12 years old working in a rope-making plant owned by a French syndicate. A French foreman of overseers stood over them with a long leather lash, using it with fervor on the laggards. The lash is indeed the symbol of French rule in Morocco, he says, and that's the whip from slavery too. When you think of slavery in America, you think of getting hit with the whip on the back. But see, the French got that from the Moors because see, when a Moor had a traitor or someone that was to be punished, they would get hit with an acacia switch that had thorns on it. So the symbol of ruling in Morocco was a whip to the back for the French. And that happened in America too, proving that Morocco is America too. Peace and love, brothers and sisters. Madam X, the founder of the Occult Science Temple in 1934 in Detroit, Michigan. On the heels of Noble Drew Ali, Nation of Islam, Fruit of Islam, Nation of Islam. But first you see Madam X. So this is the first, what you would say, I guess, long lost X, Madam X for the Nation of Islam. But we know Malcolm X, but then he found out the X as far as being unknown and not knowing who your ancestors was. He knew that was BS. He received his gnosis and he was El Hajj Malik Shabazz, El. Ali was tested on his gnosis and found out that he was an adept born and he was a prophet. Ali, honor your foremothers and forefathers. But we're also going to get into Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, who set up his mosque in Detroit as well. And the Jews assisted him in that, just like NOI stands real close beside the Jews in these days and times. We have the images on the Mexican Almanac, Farrakhan having banquets with the Jews. But here in 1923, Mufti Muhammad Sadiq set up a mosque in Detroit, Michigan, to convert Christians into Mohammedanism. However, we know Noble Drew Ali was already doing that job. But see, within the Muslim sunrise, as it said then, you see on the cover, it has bullet points of where all their operations are going to be at. See, he was set up and sent by the Jews to subvert and undermine what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was bringing. In the Muslim sunrise at that time, it said the salvation of the American Negro. He was labeling him already in his own literature as a Negro. When Noble Drew Ali was already past that, he wasn't bringing you an X or not an explanation. He had El Bay, Day, Al, and Ali. Noble Drew Ali was bringing the true old religion back, the true gnosis, and they was trying to subvert it. All of them was ganging up in Detroit, and the prophet said the grass is going to grow up in Detroit, and Chicago and Detroit got to pay for what they did to I, your prophet. So all these people was intermingled. But this Madam X, Mary Speedwell, founder of the Occult Science Temple of Detroit, Michigan. I have never heard an NOI member, Elijah Muhammad, Farrakhan, Fard's literature. I've never heard them speak of this mother. And to be honest, I hold her with more authority than any of them because the mother gives the law and the son enforces. But yet again, she was holding this X. So either she knew and was trying to fool, or she didn't know. And I moved to punch in here and speak on this as well. There's the Mary again. Remember on the, I believe it was the second, this is the third video, but on the second video, I believe we was reading through the FBI file where Farrar had two contacts on his prison list, and it was a Mary and it was a Pearl. So I'm gonna go back and see if it was Speedwell, because if it was, then he was directly connected with this Madam X. See, that's where you mess up, Nation of Islam. It's because the Moors, they study, because we want the gnosis and the art and truth so that we can unfold into perfection and be just so that repentance may be forgotten. My will is not what leads me to this information. Like before I study, you know, Allah, my protector, my guide, and my salvation. When I pray the Moorish prayer, then I go study, Allah is going to guide me to this art. The Occult Science Temple, with offices at 4698 Harding Avenue, is making preparation for a unique program of occult science demonstrations at the Lucy Thurman branch of the YWCA, corner of St. Antoine and Elizabeth Street, on Thursday night, June 14th at 8:30. The special feature on the evening program will be Madam X, who while in a dead trance will answer questions, call names, and carry out many other performances within the field of the occult. The proceeds of the program are for the benefit of the new institution, I bet, Nation of Islam, the Spiritual Health Temple, which is designed to be a home for convalescents. The Occult Science Temple is a religious organization established for the development of the occult and spiritualism according to MMA Mary E. Speedwell, its founder and gilding head. Officers of the organization are Miss F. Hardiman, President Miss Alice Taylor, and A.W. Stone, Treasurer. So let me get this straight. An X was answering your questions while in a dead trance. You got that right, and they're doing it to this day as well. They're answering your questions while in a dead trance, feeding you pig snout soup. That's what the Grand Sheikh said. Y'all eating pig snout soup. But I want to go back to Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, because within that newspaper, it speaks of, he gives a theme of what Jesus would answer to the immigration officer if he came to North America. And it's interesting because he speaks on nationality and of his last so-called name and everything. And he really gives it away, man, that they was not bringing you the gnosis that Noble Drew Ali was. Because remember, Nation of Islam stated Noble Drew Ali didn't have enough knowledge in Islam to keep it going. But Noble Drew Ali had way more superior gnosis, and it is clear because they were saying X. They didn't even have the divine ancient titles back to the land, to the birthrights, to divine and earthly salvation. Immigration officer, please raise your hand and take an oath that all you say will be true. Jesus, I do not believe in taking oaths. It is not right. Straight gassing it to the circle 7 right there. Don't give oaths because it spreads shame upon your face. What is your name? Jesus. What is your first name? This is my first name. What is your second name? I have no second name. This is my only name. Now, you know, Jesus said, honor your foremothers and forefathers so that your days may be what? Long upon the earth plane. So you know that he had his ancestors' appellation. This is showing that they don't know or they're trying to hold it from you. They was trying to build you into that X. What is your father's name? I have no father. Funny, how were you born? Miraculously, without a father. You have Jesus right here dishonoring his forefathers right here. We know Joseph was his father. I found this image with the turban and fez of Joseph. Now, I'm not saying that he was this pale, but I'm just saying we know that his feet was like burner brass and hair like lamb's wool. But nonetheless, miraculously, without a father. What is funny to you is right with God. Could you tell me how Adam was born without a father and without a mother? I do not know. What is your nationality? I am a Jew. What did Ali say? Woe to those who call themselves who? Yeah, this was set up by the Jews. Do you believe in the law of Moses, which allows polygamy? Surely I do. Whoever shall break the least of the commandments of the law of Moses, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Why are your hands pierced? Because I was unjustly nailed to the cross, which is Jesus's justice. What is your profession? I am a preacher of God word. See, they're putting Jesus into a Europeanized, and you can tell that this is the Ahmadiyya movement is being pushed by the Jew, because the Jews make a lot of finance from all of the, when the Christians came into Jerusalem, they made a lot of finance through all the celebrations where the Christians copied the Pentecost. Every 50 years, the Jews have it, but the Christians took it on and celebrated every year. So whenever they would come to them temples, they would always celebrate. They would get their finance, and the Jews, they made a lot of what? Let's look into the glossary of the Moorish words. Mazunas. Them Jews is after the Mazuna. The Nation of Islam is after the Mazunas. The fruit of Islam, all of these people, man, all these so-called conscious people that ain't in the Moorish Science Temple or don't have any of the Moorish Science Gnosis and don't speak of nationality as the order of the day, they're after your Mazunas, a Moorish coin. So what's the conclusion that I have in regards to this Mary who established the Occult Science Temple in Detroit 5 years after Noble Drew Ali passed? Well, I see Mary comes up a lot. Like with Noble Drew Ali's marriage license, with that Mary, Noble Drew Ali specifically said, don't go and buy your wife from the European. But after Noble Drew Ali passed, what would they need to access his inheritance? A marriage license. So Madam X, Detroit, 1934, founder of the Occult Science Temple of Detroit, Michigan. So this was the first X, man, and she established it. So basically, you could say she established the Nation of Islam. I don't hear none of the NOI speaking about this mother. So they don't know how to preserve, and they definitely don't know how to study, man. I ain't seen it in any literature I've seen, but I don't get into their literature because anytime I read it, I automatically see Noble Drew Ali in it. So I go to the original Gnosis, which is the Moorish Science Temple of America's literature from Noble Drew Ali. So I'm going to now go pull the Articles of Incorporation of the Occult Science Temple of Detroit, Michigan, and see who all's nomins is on it. You know what I mean? Because I'm just opening up every door. So when I say this could be Noble Drew Ali's wife, Mary, or it could be an inheritor and they was using her, I don't know, man, but I'm going to open up every door and look around. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm going to go pull this Article of Incorporation. It said that they was organized as a religious organization, and all of them was doing exactly what Noble Drew Ali was doing, but doing it in a de facto way. It's a perfect sense of how to know what is de jure and de facto. And think of Nation of Islam and what this Madam X, Farrakhan was bringing. It's the de facto Moorish Science Temple. I just looked online and I see that some people did mention Madam X, like Patrick Bowen has it in one of his books on Brill.com, but it doesn't have the image of the mother. So I have the image for you. So that's a favor for you, Nation of Islam. That's like your long lost Madam X that you don't never speak about because she copied Ali. Then there's another reference, Occult Science by Steiner Rudolph. The price for that book is 450 notes. The PDF I was telling you about with Patrick Bowen, that's 45 notes. I got to speak on this. Like I always say, in regards to the Europeans, Patrick Bowen, Peter Moon, Peter Lamborn Wilson, all these Europeans, all the notes, all the Mazunas they made off of their books, how much of that did they put back into the Moorish nation? You know what I mean? How much work and how much dedication and study time do they have in regards to the Moors? This man's asking 45 Mazunas for his PDF. Like this year, I put out 2 books and they're my books. I asked 5 notes a piece, 5 Mazunas. And then I had people comment saying, I'm asking for finance, but I made the 2 booklets and I asked for 5 Mazunas. The herbs booklet, your ancestors' list of herbs that they took in 1876, the Moors Herbs booklet of 1876, and the Moorish Children's Story. So Little Green Star and the Moorish Herbs booklet, your ancestors' list of herbs that they used to heal themselves with naturopathic remedies. Both of them I put out this year. So I'm gonna ask for my Mizunas, man, because these Europeans are asking 45 notes for the PDF. It's on the site for 5 Mizunas. Peace and love. 45 damn Mizunas for a PDF. So we have a Moorish Messiah, which they're saying Muhammad himself foresaw, and who he prophesies should be a clan of the Quraysh and a descendant of his own. Noble Drew Ali said, back when I was Muhammad, but also all good Muslims of all sects, believe that in the dark hour of Islam, God will send down a Mahdi or a teacher. And it speaks of a Moorish Messiah. This is 1882, before Noble Drew Ali was born. The Mohammedans are looking for the advent of a Moorish Messiah, and that's what was circulating. It is claimed that their prophet gave intimation of such a one, and that's Muhammad, given what? Intimation of a Moorish Messiah. And it seems that for the past 25 years, the report of his near coming has been industriously circulated through the Moorish Muslim world. So it was circulated through what? The Moorish Muslim world, that there was going to be a Moorish Messiah that Muhammad foresaw. He will restore Islam, reunite the faithful, uniting of Asia, and either become caliph or for a time supersede him as a ruler of the Mohammedans throughout the world. This is a uniting of Asia. Usually the belief is of no more importance than the belief of some Christians in the coming of the millennium, but of late it has taken a stronger hold of the general Muslim mind, has become a dogma instead of a recognized idea. So by the time Noble Drew Ali came, you don't even know who is in front of you, brothers. It has become a dogma instead of a recognized idea, crops up in many places at once, and most seriously disturbs the old establishment Mohammedan governments. I thought it was circulating that Muhammad even foresaw this Moorish Messiah. So why are they now calling him a pretender and saying that it would destroy the Mohammedan governments? Because they're not doing the right thing. They went astray. So now they want to say pretender, when it was already prophesied by their own prophet that a Moorish Messiah was coming. But now they're wanting to say pretender and that he would destroy the establishment of the Mohammedan governments. But that's the governments that went astray, just like the corporations that are in North America today acting as governments. They fell astray. They're treasonous. There was a Moorish Messiah that was foresaw, and he came. He's Noble Drew Ali. I mean, in regards to studies, when speaking to, brothers and sisters who, say Muhammad is their prophet, hey, Muhammad foresaw a Mahdi, a Moorish Messiah, and here come Noble Drew Ali, who was Moorish, and he was a prophet. We're not going to be going over the whole article today, although there's so much more information in it. But this was a real good bullet point to start with in regards to, Muhammad, and as far as Noble Drew Ali, it was foresaw. If you want to go over the whole article, it will be in a study group at Califia Society, the Moorish Science Temple of America, Grand Sheikh Jerry Bey. He has a study group. So if you want to become a part of that, just contact him on Instagram. It's at Jerry Blaze Bay. And they'll be having a study group, and I sent this to them so y'all can go in depth on it, because there's a lot of good information, especially tying the bridge to unite with, the brothers who feel Muhammad is their prophet, which is very true because he spoke in their tongue. But Noble Drew Ali spoke in our tongue, the same message, but every tongue must confess their own.
As most of you know, like all of you know, I'm a Shriner and have been for many years. Brother Eric Sams and Brother Danny Phillips are also members of the nobility. But to wear that fez and call yourself a Shriner has not always been the easiest thing in the world. The first group called was Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, now known as Shrine International, was founded in 1872 with the charter of Mecca Temple in New York City. It was founded by a physician, Dr. Walter Fleming. In 1893, a lot of conflicting stories about how this happened, but the legend is that there was an African-American Mason named John G. Jones. He and 12 others were initiated into the mystic shrine by Rofel Pasha, an Arab who was visiting the World's Fair in Chicago. There's a lot of problems with that story.
And even during the time that Noble Drew Ali was 7 years old, there was one that was called the Moorish Temple in Chicago. And I'm going to read the quick little article because I've had these clippings, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with them. And then it kept pressing in front of me because Grand Sheik, on one of his videos, he showed this image of the Moorish Palace. And as far as the World's Fair, that's where the Shriner just said that John G. Jones went and received his charter, which was from a Pasha. But John G. Jones kept himself Jones, and they both was calling each other white and black as colors. So I don't think they really had the adept teachings, man. I don't know if they went to a Moorish temple or not, but I know Ali instituted this shrine. I think they was just playing Moors. They was just playing Moors. World's Fair notes. A triangular space of the Moorish palace is enclosed with mirrors in such a way that a person standing in the center finds himself reflected some 500 times, and 10 or 12 persons give an appearance of a small army. A concession has been granted to Mr. Stepani to erect a Moorish palace at the World's Fair. One of the many attractions which he proposes to exhibit in the palace is a 1 million in gold coin in one pile. He believes that this will be a great drawing card and that nearly every visitor will want to see it. Of course, great precautions will be taken for the safety of such great treasure. It will be in a strong cage, and Mr. Stepani says, just under the gold will be constructed a fire and burglar-proof vault. To the doors of this vault will be connected electric wires. In the event of an attempt to rob the palace, my guards will press an electric button. The entire pile will fall into the vaults and the door will spring shut. A space 200 by 250 feet was granted for the Moorish palace, upon which Mr. Stepani says he will expend 400,000 notes. It is best to set aside a certain sum to spend on the plaisance, for there are so many attractions and so many pretty things displayed at the booths that the temptations to spend money is very great. The most interesting places to visit on the plaisance are the Irish Village, Libby Glassworks, Hagenbach's Animal Show, Javanese, Dahomey, and German Villages, Street in Cairo, Japanese Store, and the Moorish Temple. Here's the Great Ferris Wheel, and it speaks about other things at the World Fair. But Moorish Temple, the Shriner really spilled the beans. He knows Ali instituted the shrine in 656. And then Ali bloodline, he did the video of Noble Drew Ali. So he knows the Ali bloodline came back, and he speaks later on. We're going to listen where he speaks of how the rituals began within the shrine. It wasn't instituted by Ali, not that part. The knowledge of mathematics, science, of knowing thyself, all of that was instituted by Ali. But the ritual happened when he says that this movie star went and seen a play in Versailles, and it had rituals in it that he wrote down on a notebook and then implemented it into the Shriners. So all of that, man, like I always say, Masons are missing the true sublime meaning. Only they have the ritual. We're about to listen to the end of his testimony where he speaks of how the ritual came about, but also how Europeans, this movie star, they started putting notes in and making their own Moorish palaces when it was supposed to be charter to charter in regards to Ali and the Grand Sheiks. Masonry has lost the key to its mysteries. The vast majority of its members know nothing but the ritual. And watch, this is what he's about to say, how the ritual came about.
Florence as an actor who traveled various places, and he had visited Marseille, France, and the story goes that he attended a play one time in Marseille. At the end, there was an initiation into a secret society who made notes, and based on that, Dr. Fleming wrote the ritual. An actor named Billy Florence. There was, in those years after the Civil War, there was craze going around about the number 13. A place called Knickerbocker Cottage in New York. It was a restaurant. A group of men would meet for lunch every day. And there had to be 13 of them. If there was 12, they had to call it off. If there was 14, one person had to leave. And they sat down for lunch at exactly 12:13 each day. That was just a craze going around New York. And a lot of these men were Masons, and they decided they wanted a fund organization.
So yeah, as this Shriner says, Florence, who was an actor, he wrote down the rituals in a play in Versailles. And then, they started putting money into these extravagant Moorish palaces, which they lost the true key of what the Moorish temple was for, though. It was to give out the information, the keys that was released by Allah from India, Egypt, etc., as it says in the Quran. Noble Drew Ali came back to straighten all that up. Even the Shriner, like he said, 2 or more Europeans do something, they're going to mess it up or tear it up. So that's exactly what the Shriners did with the temple. The pale skins, the grand sheiks, the European grand sheiks. The 1913 booklet I have, it says Ali instituted, but then they go against all the things that Ali brought forth, like don't give an oath because it spreads shame on your face. But within the El Hatama warning, which is what I put out towards the Shriners because they violated everything Ali brought, it said don't give an oath because it spreads shame on your face. That's what it says in Noble Drew Ali's Quran. But within the same institution that his bloodline instituted, they're giving oaths, but they have an El Hatama warning. And this is what they're going to get. Now, in regards to John G. Jones, his claim of the path he took is correct, right? He said he went to the World's Fair, received a charter. We know that the Moorish temple was at the World's Fair. So that sounds right to me. However, again, he came back as a Jones. He didn't come back as a El Bey Al or Ali. So I don't know. Maybe they was just playing Moors. But the end all be all is that the Moorish temple is where it was at to get your gnosis. The Moors had on display everything, man, from the sciences to the social, the economic, being industrious, making something out of nothing. And they was all trying to get there. And you got these Moors in front of you today, and you walk right by and don't say nothing, man. Y'all are fools. So John G. Jones sounds like he was kind of on the right path. He said at least he got a charter. Fleming saying that somebody brought it to him from somewhere else. But nonetheless, man, we know the rituals and all that came from that play. We know that John G. Jones claimed to go to the World's Fair where Moorish Temple was in Chicago. And then you have Noble Drew Ali seeing all this and like, man, these Europeans done put these rituals, these oaths, all this stuff in this. And so he came back and pulled the veil off and let everybody see, man, who was the true. And that's the one who instituted the shrine, which was Ali. And the ones that are subordinate to the Shriners are the Knights of Columbus, the Knights Templar, the Masonic temples, even the Knights of Malta. All of them fall under the shrine. The shrine's supposed to be enforcing Ali's law and keeping them in check, man, because we know they're already here, but they can't just be sitting here still playing around. The Shriners are supposed to enforce law on them, and they've been stagnant. But this Shriner spilled the beans for some reason. Like I came across on eBay where they was selling the documents where the Shriners sued the Prince Hall Masons because the Prince Hall Masons bought all the used fezzes and garbs that the Shriners had. So then they sued them for like copyright, saying, the logos you have on your fez you can't wear because they're ours or whatever. But then that ties also to Noble Drew Ali. He said, don't mark your fez. So he probably seen that stuff and was like, well, don't mark your fez. It shows you're free. Bringing up legends saying they went to the World's Fair, or some pasha came and visited them one night in the middle of the night and gave them a charter. Man, I've spoke to Moors. I speak to Moors every day, man. You can't just try to play Moor. You got to be in contact with these Moors. Europeans used to walk thousands of miles just to sit in a cave and get the gnosis from a Moor, and I can press a button, man. So you better take advantage of that, because I do, man. I can press a button. I ain't got to walk miles like my ancestors did. Islam. Pilgrims and Crusades. This reading really explains in regards to the pale skins taking the pilgrimage to Holy Lands. But through the years, man, people started coming there, not making the pilgrimage. They was setting up on the way. So they started stacking up and starting to colonize like roaches. But honors to the brothers and the mothers and the sisters that did take their pilgrimage to Jerusalem or Mecca, but not to colonize. The same faith that had fantasized the landscape and imprisoned Christians in dogmatic geography would lure pilgrims and crusaders from Europe on paths of discovery to the east. The Star of Bethlehem, which drew the three kings, which is, what they call the three wise men, but they are Moorish Magi, guided countless faithful in later centuries to their Holy Land. So the Moorish Magi were the guiders to the Holy Land, Islam. Pilgrimage became a Christian institution, and paths of faith would become paths of discovery. Within a century after the death of Jesus, a few intrepid believers were journeying to Jerusalem for penance, for Thanksgiving, or simply to walk the earth when their Savior had walked. Moors just watching them all run around. After Emperor Constantine became a Christian, his mother, Empress Helena, went to Jerusalem in 327, turned archaeologist. You see what I mean? Found the Mount of Calvary, collected supposed pieces of the true cross, and even uncovered the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus reputedly had been buried. There, Constantine himself built the first church of the Holy Sepulchre. And that's how it goes, man. St. James Church, Catholic churches, all of these cathedrals are built on sacred land. That's why when you walk on the church's land, it feels sacred, because it is. At one time, there was something sacred sitting there. All cathedrals used to be Moorish, arches and all. We have the images, the newspaper clippings to prove all of that. All cathedrals used to be Moorish, palaces, mosques, all of that. The learned St. Jerome settled in 386 in a monastery in Bethlehem, provided by the noble Roman lady St. Paula, where he instructed pilgrims after they had visited the holy places. By the early 5th century, there were 200 monasteries and pilgrim hospices near Jerusalem. Meanwhile, they pushed the Moors out, just like in Mecca and the Kaaba. They mile-long guard on the Atlas Mountains, even Jerusalem's to the Moors. Islam. St. Augustine and other church fathers warned that the Christian tourist to the Holy Land might be distracted from his journey to the heavenly city. Still, the stream of pilgrims grew, aided by countless handy guides and a chain of hospitable lodgings all along the way. The pilgrim, blessed by his priest before setting out, carrying staff and mussel shell. And the mussel shell, again, St. James, all the Catholic churches, the Pope has the shell. I remember 10 years ago when, the Pope had the picture of him with the Moor's head, and it had the mussel shell. So I guess the popes are making their claim they took their pilgrimage to Jerusalem and received their shell from the priest. But the priests have all gone mad. They saw a demon in the wilds and at him cast their lamps, and they are broken up, and not a gleam of light has any priest for men. The priesthood cannot be reformed. It is already dead. Its greatest needs are graves and funeral chants. The New Age calls for liberty, the kind that makes each man a priest, enables him to go alone and lay his offering on the shrine of Allah. And he can put his hand in the laws and know that all is well. Let's continue. Wearing his broad, flat-crowned hat and wearing the badge of his destination became a picturesque figure in the medieval panorama. The Latin peregrinatio came to mean any wandering, and peregrinus for pilgrim became a synonym for stranger. But the pilgrim, properly speaking, was someone, whatever his regular occupation, on the way to a sacred destination, and the palmer, so called from the palm branches brought back from Rome, was a religious vagrant who might spend his whole life wandering from one holy place to another. And that's exactly as far as like what the Masons speak of, are you a traveling man? But the Masons in these days and times, they're not even pilgrims no more. They ain't took the pilgrimage to Mecca there or here or to Jerusalem. They hold no ancient Moorish gnosis. They just want to blend in. Meanwhile, they usurp the Muslim society. Their philosophy is not the philosophy of the ancient wise men. If it were, all would be well. But sad to say, the prevailing ideas of the principle are the outgrowth of pagan philosophy, a philosophy that advocates the necessity of war or in order that one nation may become great at the expense of the other. Masons have lost the key to its own mysteries. The vast majority of its members know nothing but the ritual and have no idea that beyond the ritual there is a mighty sublime philosophy, and that in it is contained the very foundation of religion itself, as well as the basis of all true science. So just like these Masons, those priests that was handing out the shells wasn't even the real priest anymore. Like they said, it was the strangers. They was in garb in the costume, probably taking a Byzantine coin or two. And, it just got diluted, man, like everything. But that's why Ali came and awoke in the Moors. So let's continue. The decline of the Western Roman Empire, along with the rise of pirates, vandals, and others, made the pilgrims' lot difficult and dangerous. The extensive conquest around the Mediterranean, the rise of Islam, and the increase of Muslim pilgrims congested the Christian pilgrim routes. There they go, pushing the Moors out, bro, getting too big for their britches. That's just like a European standing there telling you to go back to Africa, and they are not from America, bro. It got too congested, but they said the rise of Islam. Moors was always there, and in Mecca, Medina, all around. But yeah, congested the Christian pilgrim routes and brought a bitter contest for Jerusalem. It was from the rock at the Temple Mount, site of the Temple of Solomon, that Muhammad had ascended into heaven. Some Muslim traditions made Jerusalem and not Mecca the center of the navel of the earth, the highest of all the countries and the nearest to heaven. When the Caliph Omar, riding on a white camel, entered a surrendered Jerusalem only 6 years after the death of Muhammad, he opened a millennial battle for the holy places. And remember, there was a lot of them that felt like Ali wasn't the successor, right? Just think of like The Wire. When Omar came through the neighborhood, man, he was about to take everybody's stuff. You might as well just throw it out the window. They was running down the Ali sons, no matter where they was, to make them get on their knees and put their head to the ground and say that they're the successor, not Ali. The great age of Christian pilgrimage had begun in the 10th century. Muslims were generally tolerant, if contemptuous, of these passionate unbelievers. But as the distant Holy Land became less accessible, pious Christians found the balm of pilgrimage near home. They produced a hybrid literature of history, sociology, myth, and folklore. In the popular Guide de Pèlerin, one could read of the pilgrim who had asked a woman in Villeneuve for a piece of the loaf of bread she was baking under hot ashes in her oven. She refused, and when she went for her loaf, she found only a round stone. Man, they was over there still in Jerusalem butter bread. They was still in butter bread in Mecca, man. I mean, Jerusalem. I mean, everywhere. All right, man. I hope y'all enjoyed this, brother. I got to get off now, man. They was still in butter bread from Mecca, man, and Jerusalem butter bread. A couple of days ago, I put up a demonstration, and it was talking about how a European went and met two Moors. And the Moors took them to eat, and they gave them wheat bread and honey. So the Moors know that the pale-skinned pilgrims love that Mecca butter bread too. Peace and love, brothers and sisters. Islam. Jerusalem. Pale pilgrims love that Mecca butter bread.
There is one summary for H. Res. 847. Bill summaries are authored by CRS. Shown here, introduced in House 121322021. This resolution recognizes the 73rd anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, supports the designation of Human Rights Day, and encourages the observation of Human Rights Day and a continued commitment to upholding human rights around the globe.
I wanted to go over House Resolution 847 in regards to the United States and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the last demonstration, I remembered this, but I never went over it. I just put it up on, for people to view. But I want to go over it. It's only 3 short pages. Whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations on December 10th, 1948, represents the first comprehensive agreement among countries as to the specific rights and freedoms of all human beings. And that's what Noble Drew Ali was preparing you for, the great meeting, when all nations would come together in unity and learn to love instead of hate, the uniting of Asia. Whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights upholds the basic principles of liberty and freedom enshrined in the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. So when they engage with someone and they don't know their identity or anything, right? And they assume them as a color, black or white, which takes them out of the human race, and you give them knowledge that you are not Negro, black, colored, or any color, that you are of the human race, and you have a nationality in line with Article 15 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But then the next time they engage with you, they force the identity of a color on you. So they haven't been, being in line with universal law, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is enshrined. Your liberties and all that is enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, brothers. Whereas awareness of human rights, which is a big problem because people keep cycling the monster, is essential to the realization of fundamental freedoms. Right there, a wire connects. That's the same wording as trop versus duels. Nationality is of paramount importance to the realization of fundamental rights. So they've already been telling you about this. 2, promotes equality. 3, contributes to preventing conflict in human rights violations and enhances participation in democratic procedures. But there we go with the Democrat, the demo, the mobocracy. However, our studies show that Portugal is basically running the UN right now presently, and they run the Order of the Cross against Muslims and Islam, contributes to preventing conflict in human rights violations. So US, Biden come on right now and be like, we've ratified the human rights. But if they don't honor it, what are you going to do about it? That's the problem, because they're doing it in your face. So my question is, what are you going to do about it? Reaffirms the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, supports the right of human right defenders. Are you going to defend it? All over the world to promote the fundamental freedoms enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Encourages the people of the United States to observe Human Rights Day and to continue a commitment to upholding freedom. Then there's the democracy, mobocracy, and human rights around the globe. So are you going to defend human rights? Because when someone tries to violate your rights and you lay them down, can't you say, I'm defending my human rights? I'm a defender around the world. No, they would spread you around in the papers and the TV or newspapers as a terrorist, a domestic terrorist for defending. Before we get into this human rights newspaper clip, I wanted to go over some of these definitions on the etymon. Autocrat, absolute sovereign, ruler or monarch who holds power of government as by right, not subject to restrictions. In reference to the Russian Tsars who assumed it as a title, then to Napoleon, from French autocrat, from Latinized form of Greek autocrates, ruling by oneself, absolute autocratic, from autos, self, kratia, rule, from krates, strength, power. The Greek noun was autocrator, and an earlier form in English was autocrates, autocracy. Independence, power, self-sustained power, self-government, obsolete, from French autocratie, from Latinized form of Greek autocratia. Absolute rule, rule by oneself. Now, we know that the Moorish Empire is matriarch, but these are the men trying to use might is right again. That's why everything is in shambles, because the mother, they turn to a ghost, which brings me to an Ali key. When she pointeth, the servants fly. When she speaketh, it shall be done. But her kindness addeth wings to their feet. The mother gives the law, and the son enforces. Our noble aim in this war, struggling for the rights of man against the brutality of the despot. The United States is at war against Germany for 2 fundamental reasons. For one thing, the present war from the beginning has been essentially a conflict between democracy and autocracy, and a nation conceived in liberty, as America was, cannot look uncaring upon the triumph of autocracy anywhere in the world. In the second place, We are fighting for the maintenance of human rights on the high seas. The sea is the public road of all nations. No country has the right to make it unsafe for people to travel the high seas of water, just as no man has the right to make it unsafe for other men to travel our highways of earth. But ain't that what they're doing today? You can't even go down the road without having 4 different pieces of paper that they demand finance and usurping the hell out of you, man. And then you don't put your window down enough, man, they'll break that out and drag you out. So yeah, U.S. has basically ratified the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Question is, are you going to be a defender of it? What are you going to do about it if they violate it? Which brings to mind the Emiliel oral statement. Emiliel said that the prophet said, if the Moors do as I say, they would have an army and a navy, and they'll be able to whoop this U.S. flag. But we don't want any problems. But if we're backed into a corner, we must see results. Which I want to speak on Broswell Bay too, and all the Moors is claiming to be supreme grand major temples and all this stuff, man. You got grand sheiks that went to Mecca and got their charters, and they've been paying, whatever rent on their temples and their home and paying for their food, still demonstrating in all of that, man. And the prophet also said, Moors, you're going to always have everything you need with a little bit of pocket money. So all these grand sheiks that's been paying monthly for their rent, for the temples and stuff, and doing their personal stuff too, them grand major temples owe them because they claiming to be grand major. So they're supposed to be taking care of that stuff. But you know what they do? They say, oh, that Moor violated the so-and-so of the Constitution. He ain't temple no more. So they ain't got to pay. That ain't supposed to be coming out the personal pocket of a grand sheik. Y'all owe them, man, for years and years of all this Islam.
No bow ties, no NOI. Say you Muslim, but you do commercials with sane odds. 7 on the necklace, but Allah is the eye. Looking from above with your hand in the pie. Killed Prodigy cause he knew about Ali. Jay-Z sucked the lips off Prince Haji. Slave masters in your hand, dumb bitches calling bands. Hope for value, the pictures of people calling you a brand. Slave masters in your hand, dumb bitches calling bands. Hope for value, the pictures of people calling you a brand. Hey, that pie's hot. Oh man, you done burnt your whole hand off, bro. El Hatima.
Islam, peace and greetings. So I received a call from Nathan X, who is an NOI member, and he was asking me questions. He was like, he's seen the demonstration in regards to the birthmark. So he's like, are you Farad Muhammad? Are you the prophet? And and I told him, look, Noble Drew Ali is the prophet. So go to the Moorish Science Temple of America. Let's begin. Noble Drew Ali. Chicago is doomed, and Detroit must go down for what they have done to I, your prophet. One day grass is going to grow up in Detroit. This report contained information which was given to the Detroit office by the Michigan State Police in a memorandum dated June 16, 1942. This memorandum reflected that a W.D. Fard, alias Davis L., which is a Moorish title, 9316 Oakland Avenue, Detroit, was known as the Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and that he was believed to be from Kansas City, Missouri, or from Chicago. This memorandum advised that the Muslims were organized in Detroit in 1913 by Robert D. Ali. He was later ran out of Detroit in 1929. Well, how convenient, because that's the same time that the prophet was perfecting the Moorish Science Temple of America around 1913, from the Canaanite Temple to the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Science Temple of America, 1913. Fard was trying to mold his story into Noble Drew Ali's. From 1913 to 1929, it said he was ran out of Detroit, but that's when the prophet was murdered. When I showed the birthmark demonstration, I'm going to show another one to 19 Keys. If you're divinely connected to Allah, then you can show demonstrations like I showed. But I'm going to show another one where it said Robert D. Ali. This is the humor of Allah. He was calling himself Robert D. Ali, right? Well, Robert D. is what my nomen is, Dale, which is D and ALE is Ali. Robert D. or Robert D. Ali. I'm just giving you and showing you divine demonstrations because I want to see yours. You're saying you're divinely connected to all this, but I don't see it, bro. Show me. You see where they scratched out the Yates? The teacher did that with the report card. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you I was an orphan, so I went through orphanages. My nomen was changed, different stuff, man, usurping. They drink the orphan's tears like milk. So you have the X, right? Well, the same thing is happening to Europeans. You call them blue-eyed, pale-skinned devils, which is Neptune, furthest from the sun, pale skin. Blue ethers is the blue eyes, so the blue-eyed, pale-skinned devil. And that's the sign of Neptune is the pitchfork with the cross, right? But I refused to let them drink my tears like milk. And I studied. And now I know thyself. Yates, right? None of that was my nomens or my bloodline, bro. I was left in total darkness, man. And Ali helped me raise up and run this race and find out who I am. And now I know who I am, my nationality, the paramount importance of nationality. And I'm trying to help my people and your people, bro. And you're going against it while I'm trying to assist. Trying to bring a new character in Nation of Islam is not going to work this time because you're dealing with divine beings, bro. The hells is already awakened. I do not understand why you're trying to bring a new character in and try to keep the people asleep. It's going to cause earthquakes and all kinds of different things. I'm telling you, you need to make your appeal with the law and start telling ought to the people, because when they wake up and find out, man, and find out how special Noble Drew Ali is, they're going to rip you apart and your buildings apart brick by brick. May Allah let this be. I told you Allah is the best of planners and he has a very stern humor. But see, it ain't about war with you, because you can run and appeal to Allah right now and then come and tell the people the truth and be saved, bro. But I don't know if you're going to do that or not. I don't know if you're built like that or not. Which reminds me of an Ali bloodline key. If you see a man sin today and you see him tomorrow, don't look at him the same, because he may appeal to Allah that night. You know what I'm saying? So you can still save yourself, bro. Let's move on with Robert D. Ali. Kerner advised that the photographer Fard at University of Islam photographed in black and white and was a glamorized or touched up picture. She recalls that the picture was taken from a 45-degree angle instead of a full face or a profile. Ms. Kerner was asked if she was positive of the identification she had made, and she stated there was no doubt in her mind that the two persons were the same. Remember, I was speaking of the murky ethers. Like Noble Drew Ali let us know that even on the next plane, there's going to be enemies that we have to be victorious over. And it causes confusion on this realm too. Now watch this. San Quentin records reflect that while in that institution, letters were received attesting to Ford's good character from the following individuals. It has his wife, Hazel Osborne, but then look, Miss Mary Brown, and then Miss Pearl Morton. You see Mary and Pearl? This was like 1926 or something like that. And those Mary and Pearl, besides his wife, was the only two contacts that he had written down in San Quentin. So when he writes down Mary Brown and Pearl Morton, he could have wrote down whatever address as far as Los Angeles, and it shows that they wasn't confirmed. Those addresses wasn't confirmed. But those are the murky ethers that's working from the other side into here, because Mary and Pearl was the two nomens that was Noble Drew Ali's wife. So you see how, did he know Mary and Pearl during this time? Because it also says that letters was sent back and forth too, not just these character letters. So the murky ethers, man, get thick. That's why you just have to stay with Noble Drew Ali, because look, man, Mary and Pearl, what is the odds of that? And as you can see, this Mary and Pearl, both of them said they knew Fard for 10 to 11 years and he was close to the family. There's too much resistance going on against Noble Drew Ali. It lets me know that he is divine and that he is a prophet and that he's on the other side right now doing work just like he was here. But I know now those on the other plane can affect information and again, make the ethers murky on this side, because it's like he's trying to form into Noble Drew Ali. Even in these days, they still try to recreate characters to put in front of you, you know, so-called leaders. Now it's thought leaders. That's why I uploaded the El Hatima warning in regards to Nation of Islam and 19 Keys. Because I mean, the Moors put this information out a long time ago, but Ali raised me. So maybe if I do it, maybe it'll shift the ethers. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put it on record with the universe, man. Again, you're messing with divine beings, even with the pale skin, man. A pale skin has been raised, and the only one that did that was Ali. 19 Keys, Nation of Islam members, Farrakhan, any of you. You come build and speak with me, you'll never hear another European speak like me because I've been raised by Ali. You must unfold into perfection so that repentance be forgotten, and to give an oath spread shame upon your face. Turn away from your sinful ways and learn to love instead of hate. Honor your foremothers and forefathers so that your days may be long upon the earth plane. Divine honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Divine and National Movement of the world. Peace and love. Like the message, if I could have a message for the young Moors and the Europeans, as far as Noble Drew Ali, is what they can't see now, what I've been saying, like about the plenipotentiary for Cuba was located in Chicago, 1928. He was Noble Judah. Noble Judah was the plenipotentiary for Cuba for the United States. When the United States wanted to communicate with Cuba, they used Noble Judah in Chicago, 1928. His embassy, what you would call, it was in Chicago. He has a 7 acres with a sign that has the 7, and it's 7 acres that he had in his estate as well. But Noble Judah, what happened was Noble Judah's wife, she has to do with AT&T. She inherited the pulling the plugs and put them in the other plugs back in the day when you would, talk to different countries or you wanted to send telegrams. So in Havana, Cuba, since Noble Judah was the ones who talked to Cuba, 1928 and 29, all nations came together, all the pale skin nations, because the only ones that was warring at the time was the pale skin nations. But within these telegrams, it's called the Great Compact. It was the first agreement of all nations, all pale skin nations, to come together and agree to perpetual peace. But then there was a little telegram sent that said, what about the Sharifian government, the Moroccans, because they have never been at war. They have always been on the defensive side of all of our nations. So they're not a party. So then all the nations agreed that anyone can become within this compact of peace agreement by sending oral or written statement to the Secretary of State in Washington, D.C., agreeing to perpetual peace with all nations. But you have the right to defend yourself if that's infringed upon, which was what Noble Drew Ali was said. If you can run away, run away. But if you're backed into the corner, then you can defend yourself. It all goes into this compact. All the nations, Russia, all of them came together and agreed to perpetual peace, perpetual forever, recycling over and over again. But it was done through Noble Judah, the plenipotentiary for United States for Cuba, who was located in Chicago. Like Noble Drew Ali said, I have a lion on the leash. Noble Judah's the lion. He was well known. He was a European man, but he was well established in Chicago, known as Noble Judah, the plenipotentiary to speak with Cuba for the United States. And it's all on the page and all that, man. I don't want to I'm just saying a short message because I know the younger Moors can come in and take this information, man, because hey, the elders ain't listening, bro. They're not listening like to this information. Also, Noble Drew Ali, North Carolina, there was a man in the 1800s to 1870s and 80s, right before the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born in North Carolina, a man named Uncle Moore, Prince Moore. He was a man that was, they kidnapped a man and was going to sell him over here as a slave, but they didn't know he was a prince. His name was Prince Moore. I mean, he was in the Moroccan Empire at the time, but they call it Fula. It was the Fulas. He was a Fula prince, but he was known as Prince Moore. So when they brought him here, He ended up living with the governor in North Carolina. And they found out he could write Arabic. He was keeping his craft sharp. He mastered Islam and he mastered Arabic like at the age of 7 or 10, the same as Ali that was born from Fatima, who gave birth to that Ali in the Kaaba. They say you're facing the Kaaba, but the Kaaba has to do with the Ali, because Fatima Ali gave birth to that Ali inside of the Kaaba. That's why I'm saying the young Moors need to listen to this, because nobody can see or hear at this point what I'm saying, man, because there ain't no other Moor talking about this. Also, the image of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I ain't seen no other Moors take and share and say, look, here's an image of Ali in Calcutta in 1923 with two fakirs that had the stones around their neck. I found that, which means whoever said that before, Peter Moon or Hakim Bey, the European that calls himself Hakim Bey, Peter Lamborn, whoever wrote that, or it was the younger brother. What's his name? It's Patrick Boeing. I don't know who it came from, but I do know that it said like around 2012, I remember reading that Noble Drew Ali was around a fakir. This image in Calcutta, India, which is known as the Black Hole, it's where some of the first black casts came from. That's why Ali knew about the black and white system, because in Calcutta, India, it's called the Black Hole. And you can have two brothers that are the same blood, and one of them get caught stealing. They're classified and put in the caste system as black because they're seen as dishonorable. But the other brother didn't do that, so his status is still white. It has nothing to do with skin tone. But I found the image. This is to the young Moors. I found the image of Ali in Calcutta, 1923. It's got him with the fez on and everything. And it looks like he has two relatives to his left. There's two of them. They got real strong brows. Because you can see it in Ali, but then you can see it to the two on the side that some of them look younger. But I mean, one of them looks younger and one of them looks older. But they all have that same brow. You could tell they're related, bloodline. But yeah, this is for the young Moors. So Prince Moore has the origin of man, which Noble Drew Ali has in his Quran. And all this is the Europeans found out he knew Arabic and he was an Egyptian adept, and every European wants to, the shrine and all that. So they try to transcribe and translate what he was writing in Arabic into English. But they didn't know every word. And sometimes they'd write Allah, and then sometimes they'd write God. Just, they didn't know what they was doing, man. So it wasn't divinely prepared. But like I said, Noble Drew Ali came right behind Prince Moore in North Carolina. And he has origin of man and different things. So Prince Moore, Uncle Moore, I'm going to make the stand that this is Noble Drew Ali's uncle, because he's Prince Moore, North Carolina, 1800s. Come from the Moroccan Empire or the Moorish Empire. We have both news clips saying Moorish Empire and Moroccan Empire, or Muslim dominions, Muslim Empire. Nonetheless, man, that's Noble Drew Ali's uncle. So in North Carolina, there's a temple there that has a red flag on the left and a U.S. banner on the right outside of the mosque. It's the Omar ibn Said Mosque, and that's Prince Moore. That's Noble Drew Ali, uncle. He has an image of him sitting in the chair with the cane, and his hands are placed just like Noble Drew Ali, because Noble Drew Ali divinely prepared, because these Europeans took all of it and they messed it up. They was mailing different parts to their friends, and some people wasn't getting it back, so stuff was getting missing. But Noble Drew Ali had it, and he did what he had to do, and he divinely prepared it from Prince Moore, Uncle Moore in North Carolina, 1800s, Egyptian adept. This is for the young Moors, because I already put this information out a year, 2 years. And the Havana, Cuba, that one is very strong. Noble Judah, plenipotentiary for United States, speaking with Cuba in 1928-29, and he went to the Havana Convention with Kellogg and all of them. But that's what it's called, the Kellogg Compact. And all nations of the world met in United States, and they met in London, and they signed this peace agreement. So yeah, and there's a lot more that goes with it. But this would be my message to the Moors, man, the ones that's just coming in. Go straight to your prophet, because all the civics, man, is within them books that the prophet has. But I mean, other, Supreme Court cases, case law, res judicata, supreme law of the land, constitution. But watch out for some of the treaties, because them treaties, they would place a sultan in the seat to sign a treaty so that foreigners could get access to the land and the shore. And then they further got in over here and made treaties with India princes, which are known as the Indians, because they assisted Britain and France in occupying over here. So they was rewarded by land and stuff, but then Europeans started taking their shit too. They're India princes, descendant of India princes. So Islam to the new Moors, the young Moors that's coming in, because man, I've had this information, been putting it out, and people don't listen. And it's like, wow. But it feels good being in my seat.
I wouldn't go down that path. I can show you where to find the keys, right underneath your feet, 90 degrees, door squeak, wipe the cobwebs off the charter. I've been sitting here for 2 weeks, never speak till the prophet does. That's what it says, so that's what it was. That's what it is, long as Ali's love, as below, as above. Put my hand on my heart, thank Allah for the art that the prophet brought. Ali, forget me not.
Greetings. Nationality is the order of the day, so that's what we're going to be going through today. Speaking about Governor Coolidge, which ended up being, President Calvin Coolidge, who went to the Pan American Conference when Noble Drew Ali was there. So he knew about nationality and the paramount importance of nationality. But then once he became president, the summary he had after the Pan American Conference was speaking of Negroes and blacks. So he switched up. But we'll read this. It says, urges law and order. In urging maintenance of law and order, Governor Coolidge defined the need of America as a broader, firmer, deeper faith in people, a faith that men desire. The first flaming torch of Americanism, said Senator Harding, was lighted in framing the federal Constitution in 1787. The Pilgrims signed their simple and majestic covenant a full century and a half before and set aflame their beacon of liberty on the coast of Massachusetts. Other pioneers of New World freedom were rearing their new standards of liberty from Jamestown and Plymouth for 5 generations before Lexington and Concord heralded a new era. It was all American in the destined result, yet all of it lacked the soul of nationality. In simple truth, there was no thought of nationality in the revolution for American independence. The colonists were resisting a wrong, and freedom was their solace. Once it was achieved, nationality was the only agency suited to its preservation. Beginning of nationality. Americanism really began when robed in nationality. The American Republic began the blazed trail of representative popular government. Representative democracy was proclaimed the safe agency of highest human freedom. America headed the forward procession of civil, human, and religious liberty, which untimely will affect the liberation of all mankind. The federal Constitution is the very base of all Americanism, the Ark of the Covenant of American liberty, the very temple of equal rights. The Constitution does abide and ever will so long as the Republic survives. Let us hesitate before we surrender the nationality, which is the very soul of highest Americanism. This Republic has never failed humanity, nor endangered civilization. We have been tardy sometimes, like when we were proclaiming democracy and neutralists, while we ignored our national rights. But the ultimate and helpful part we played in the Great War will be the pride of America so long as the world recites the story. We do not mean to hold aloof. We choose no isolation. We shun no duty. I like to rejoice in an American conscience and in a big conception of our obligation to liberty, justice, and civilization. The more I like to think of Colombia's helping hand to new republics, which are seeking the blessings portrayed in our example. But I have a confidence in our America that requires no counsel of foreign powers to point the way of American duty. We wish to counsel, cooperate, and contribute, but we arrogate to ourselves the keeping of the American continent and every concept of our moral obligation. It is fine to idealize, but it is very practical to make sure our own house is in order. The first duty of a government is to be true to itself, said Governor Coolidge. This does not mean perfection. It means a plan to strive for perfection. It means loyalty to ideals. The ideals of America were set out in the Declaration of Independence and adopted in the Constitution. They did not represent perfection attained, but perfection planned. The fundamental principles was freedom. The fathers knew this was not yet apprehended. They formed a government firm in the faith that it was ever to press forward this high mark. In selfishness and greed and lust for gain, it turned aside, enslaving others. It became itself enslaved. Bondage in one part consumed freedom in all parts. The government of the fathers, ceasing to be true to itself, were perishing. But that's what exactly Calvin Coolidge did when he became president. Because after the Pan American Conference, you look at the summary and he's still speaking of Black and Negro, and he did not identify them with the nationality, knowing Noble Drew Ali was there. So he did the same thing that he just spoke of, that he said the founding fathers did, was set aside, loyalty and faith and all that. So yeah, this was nationality as the order of the day. I know some of the things in this was a little bit off, but you read between the lines and it got through clear. Nationality is the order of the day. Islam. Annual Bar Association. Members handsomely entertained. Santa Fe had big delegation present. This is 1906. Following is a partial sketch of the annual meeting of the New Mexico Bar Association, which closed its session at Cloudscroft last Thursday, and which proved to be one of the best attended meetings held by the association for years. Santa Fe, with an attendance of almost 30 out of the total of 75, contributed materially to the success of the gathering. This was the afternoon session after everybody goes home. Like in the tribunal, you're always last. The afternoon session was devoted to the delivery of strong addresses, which were mainly concerned with the statehood question. Honorable T. Catron of Santa Fe being prominent among the speakers. A partial outline of his address is as follows. Mr. Catron, in speaking of the racial peculiarities of the native people of New Mexico, said that they are not so much of Spanish or Indian blood as they are of Moorish descent. He said they are not so much of Spanish or Indian blood as they are of Moorish descent. He said that they are not only close kin of the Syrian, but are identical with the Arabians, and that their relationship to the fair-haired, blue-eyed natives of northern Spain is very remote. He then outlined the expeditions of the white man into what is now New Mexico and the history of the province under Spanish rule. In conclusion, he made a powerful argument against the proposed merger of New Mexico and Arizona and declared that it would be a grievous mistake indeed for New Mexico to stultify itself by voting for the proposed jointure, arguing that the favorable vote would destroy whatever chances New Mexico had for statehood. Thursday's session was taken up with elections of officers for the ensuing year and the election of delegates to the American Bar Association convention at St. Paul, Minnesota, and other important business. The association adjourned to meet in Santa Fe in January next year. Steps were taken at the meeting to establish closer relations with the Bar of El Paso, or to bring about a union of the New Mexico and the El Paso Bar Association by appointment of a committee. J.G. Fitch of Sorcero, E.A. Mann of Alamo Gordo to meet a similar committee of the El Paso Association. That's one of the Europeans' main goals, is to make you believe in a false boundary. Like a long time ago, I remember looking up, the territory I was at, looking at their revised statutes and the definitions. And I seen like it said territory, right? And when I looked up the definition, it said an assumed boundary by the state. So assumed boundary. So that holds no kind of weight. Islam, I hope you enjoyed the demonstration in regards to a bar association prominent speaker saying that all this was the Moors. This is from 1890. Montezuma's badge, a strange Mexican relic contained in a Vienna museum. Among the many articles of interest in the Natural History Museum at Vienna, perhaps nothing has been more discussed than an old Mexican relic which is preserved with great care under glass. The relic, which is now known as the field badge of King Montezuma, had lain for 300 years in the Ambrace collection, where it was first cataloged as a Moorish hat of long, heavy, glistening green and gold feathers. Again, where it was cataloged as a Moorish hat of long, heavy, glistening green and gold feathers. One investigator held that it was an Indian hat, another an Indian apron. Again, where it was held at first as a Moorish hat, but in 1820 it was at last known to be a Mexican badge of high rank, and through Ferdinand Hostetter, it was proved to be the genuine field decoration of King Montezuma, captured by Cortez in 1520 after the Battle of Atumba. Now it's going to explain how Moorish Montezuma, his wardrobe would be passed down all the way down even to the popes. This battle was followed by the wild fight of the Mexicans and the robbing of the land by Cortez, who sent the standard and wardrobe of the king with much gold to the Emperor Charles V of Spain. The latter gave the standard to Pope Clement. You see what I'm saying? So Moors has always been on top of everything, bro. Who sent it to the Grand Duke Ferdinand of Tyrol for the Embrace collection. It is shaped like a fan and is made from tall feathers of the bird of paradise, which have a glitter like gold over their red, green, and blue colors. The moss had partly destroyed it, but of the 500 original feathers, only 41 were much injured, and those who have been replaced by new ones, and the former beauty is fully restored. Vienna letter. So this is Montezuma, the Moorish Montezuma, wearing a Moorish fez. Red, green, and it said blue, Islam. Like 2013 to 2018, like I witnessed all the civic demonstrations that the Moors did. And you could really feel the spirit, like the spirit of liberty, like all the people wanted freedom. So they was studying, you know what I mean? Like we was raised and we knew something was wrong with the government or whatever, but we didn't have no kind of information. But that gets me to RV Bay publication. You can't say when you first went on RV Bay publication that you wasn't in shock and awe, because they gave you so much information, man. But now thinking back, the civics are really used like to activate and awaken your neurons, man. In regards to civics and going through law, it really wakes your mind up and it gets it working and turning and gets it greased back up. It really lets you cut through with x-ray glasses, especially looking at politics and the president. Like I'll tell you a story and something that I seen within Biden. One of his US citizens, while he was doing like a meet and greet, he started laying down the facts of his position that he was standing on. And Biden was like, if you want to step outside, we can handle this, right? But then I immediately thought of, when magistrates give an oath to the Constitution, because we used to pull the constitutional oath they had and then go to Mutual Liberty and get the insurance and bond numbers and stuff like that. Then you put in your complaint with their insurance, just like you hit a car. You pass all that stuff and make a claim, just like they hit your car. And a lot of times the prosecutor will stop their vendetta with you because when you do that, an investigation has to go down and it has to be an impartial party that does the investigation. But anyhow, I remember always looking at all these constitutional oaths that we got. Man, hold on. Because I'm going to show you the thing about Biden. Let me pull this dirty shame spreading magistrate's oath. All right. So when Biden said you want to step outside within the constitutional oath that you give, it says, I, being a citizen, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending. So he challenged that man to a duel, slap, slap. So he violated his own oath right there. But I want to read this too in regards to civics, and then Noble Drew Ali just comes in and just obliterates. When thou givest an oath, when thou swearest thou wilt not deceive, behold, it spreadeth shame upon thy face, and upon the face of him do that receive it. Learn to be just, and repentance may be forgotten. Learn to be honest, and oaths are unnecessary. A magistrate is supposed to use his actions and deeds, not an oath, to the Constitution. He is to secure, not allow you to waive rights and plead guilty. But see, you're supposed to be, if you violate that Constitution, it ain't just supposed to be a slap on the hand, man. It's supposed to be treason, man. You're supposed to die. So they rule by might is right. If a kidnapper has you in their basement, you can't slide a Constitution under the door and think that they're going to let you go. Like, we have the title of when you commit treason, that is death, and all of that. We've seen things work, and we've seen things that not work no more. We've seen magistrates say in open tribunal, well, I'm suspending the Constitution. Like, come on, man. He can't do that. And if he did, that means death. That's treason. But he knows might is right. So you're dealing with a de facto, unhonorable society. So don't get caught up in trying to get them to honor it because they're not honorable. They give oaths. Like, I've sat across the table from prosecutors and had them tell me, all your information is incorrect. And I'd be like, well, that's funny because on these affidavits, it's nothing but universal law and declarations. So in constitutional and res judicata, nothing more, nothing less. So you can't say it's an error. And if you are, then that means that you're just going against that. And that was enough proof for me. But see, I messed with them too. Because like they bring me in there and I go to speak to the prosecutor and I let them know, look, I already have investigations with the International Criminal Court with case number CR 192/13 with International Criminal Courts through the High Commission of Human Rights. Like, your state is already being investigated right now. So how can you try to get me for like a little traffic, whatever, when you're being investigated for human rights violations? And then they wouldn't mess with me. Sometimes they would because they had a real big vendetta. Because I did like studies, man, and found out like at their tribunal or their courthouse, they used to take people and line them up and take them across the street and hang them by this creek. And everybody would be on the other side of the creek watching. And then they would throw them down in a well. Well, now the tribunal has a enclosed wall around it with a copper dome on the top where they used to throw the bodies down the wells. Dunking stools, just like Mother Anaida said a long time ago. When you send these writs out, don't put down any information where you lay your head. In regards to it, like when you put down a mailing location, you better put down something where your head ain't laying. Because a year, 2 year, 3 year, you might, your case is over or whatever, they dismissed it, and then they come lay you down. If a foreign agency backs you into a corner and is trying to force stuff on you, like forced servitude or whatever, get your documentation in, let them know you're not Negro, Black, or colored, you're a Moorish national and all that. But when they disgrace it or where they dishonor it, then you keep that. So then when they do fall, You can come back and get each one of them individuals, just like how they did, as far as what they talk about in Lindenberg trials and all that. Have your documentation. Like I said, I have these oaths and these bonds of all these different people that violated, but they could be 80 years old and they have a knock at the door. And if not, they got to face a law with that. Each one of their grandchildren's die or something and they don't know why. You know what I'm saying? Well, they know why, because they violate day to day to day to day to day. Then they got to drink the liquor. They got to do the dope, all that craziness, because they can't look themselves in the mirror, man. They know they devils within or lower selves within. Unhonorable society trying to get them to honor some stuff, man, that they violated a long time ago. And they're operating by might is right. So, like, let's say the state of Maryland brings you into their tribunal. Like little bitty things, man. I love civics because it turns your brain on. Like you could tell, like the plaintiff is state of Maryland. So, like you'd ask the magistrate, like, you have any connection with the state of Maryland? And he'd be like, no. But then you say, well, you have a notary bond, and here's a copy of your notary bond, and it says that you make a covenant with the state of Maryland in the sum of 500 notes. So you have a covenant with the party, the plaintiff, that's trying to make a claim. That will be partial, and then you have the magistrate grin at you, and he kind of likes you a little bit because he knows you're studying, you know what I mean? But in the same note, and in the same vein of impartial, those who speak of part and partial, when it's part and parcel, if it was supposed to be that, the correct way would be saying part and impartial, because to be partial means that you're prejudiced to one side and you weigh more towards another side. But honorable means that you're neutral and equal until you find what's right and wrong. So the part and partial is wrong because it would be part and impartial. Nonetheless, it's part and parcel. I just thought about it up on YouTube right now on the Mexim Almanac. It's kind of back a little bit, but they have the declaration in regards to where U.S. is abiding by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Because if you look, man, all the way back, they was one of the few that didn't accept it. They signed the Article 55 and 56 of the U.N Charter to support the 5 fields of endeavor, but they said they never ratified it. So there was like two or three entities that didn't ratify the human rights. But I have it up on here where they actually ratified it and saying they're going to honor it, but like we was just talking about. But you hold them to that and shove that document in their face too about the human rights. And Article 25, everyone has the right to adequate living, including water, food, clothing, and shelter, health care, all that. All that's human rights, born with it. There's no privilege be taken away. There's no paper with slave masters on it. You got to give them. It's human rights, man, birthright. But you have to be in the right status. Even if you're a foreigner here, you got to be in the right status. Because if you're deemed stateless, and we have all the documentation about stateless persons and all that, the war for the stateless persons is what's going on. And there'll be 3 choices afforded to you. We done went over this, man. Well, we already into 10 minutes, brothers and sisters. So my conclusion of the Biden face-off with the U.S. citizen, he proved he is not diplomatic because the man was coming to him with a stance and a position, and Biden immediately wanted to go to war or to fight in a duel. So anytime he has a disagreement, he's going to go to war. He's not diplomatic. He showed it at the simplest form of speaking to one of his citizens. He was ready to go to war. He's a president, so-called, of the corporation that has an army, and he challenged a duel. And if someone goes to a duel with him, that's war. He has soldiers. So yeah, he's not diplomatic at all. So you can't sit there and expect any honorable or favorable reply from these people at all. So you can forget about that, man. Allah guides the movement. When he decides to split United States in half, man, everybody got to go and barter and, go back to the old time, the merchant, sitting on the side of the road, man, flipping pancakes. But at the end of the day, he makes his bread. That's the way it needs to be. That's true money right there, man. Islam, peace and love. Divine honors the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Divine and National Movement, and the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, which was a civics organization. Islam.